Chapter 50-58. As soon as the holy ointment was released, hymns resounded in the area within a radius of 10,000 miles. Holy light shone out from the liquid, and within the holy light, pure balsamine flowers, sparkling olive branches, and plump grapes were all revealed. A feeling of satisfaction and happiness involuntarily rose from the bottom of Xiaohua's heart. The holy ointment seemed to be colorless, but when it poured down from Angel Zhangjie's head, it quickly infected Zhangjie's long hair, forehead, and neck. As it slid down her white robe, it also seeped into her spirit body. Countless blood-colored shadows howled in anguish as they were annihilated by the holy ointment. Countless pitch-black shadows were also expelled from Zhangjie's body by the holy ointment, turning into black threads that fell into the void. However, when the holy ointment had covered all of Zhangjie's spiritual body and even dripped down to her ankles, hundreds of tiny black lines were still hiding inside her spiritual body like poisonous snakes, entangling her heart and other organs. Sigh. Zhangjie lowered her head to look at the black threads in her spirit body. She seemed to be muttering to herself, but also seemed to be explaining to Xiaohua, wearing a human body is really troublesome. Not only is it tainted with humanity, it is also unknowingly soaked in sin. Humans are born with sin. Since they wear human clothes, they naturally fall into the shackles of sin. Xiaohua didn't understand and asked curiously, Zhangjie, my human race's Confucian cultivators have a saying, humans are born with good natures. Similar in nature, different habits? I wonder what you mean by humans are born with evil natures? Moreover, didn't you say that this holy ointment is a good thing to expel sin and heal injuries? Why can't it help you recover? Zhangjie looked at Xiaohua, then looked at the utensils above her head and said, humans are born with the appearance of a child, ignorant of the inside and outside, like a blank sheet of paper. But in reality, their nature has already been condensed. This is something that cannot be changed by any environment. Moreover, since they are humans, they naturally become the residents of sin. In this world, there is no body that is free of sin. How can it not be that humans are born with evil natures? Xiaohua smiled and said, if that is the case, then only the spirit bodies of angels are free of sin, right? Of course, Zhangjie said without hesitation, only the spirit bodies created by us holy masters are free of sin. Forget it. Xiaohua didn't argue with her and smiled. Let's not talk about this anymore. You should hurry up and expel the sin of the human form. But it's a little troublesome. Zhangjie raised his eyebrows and raised his hands. He made a strange hand gesture and placed it in front of his chest. Then he began to chant praises. Gradually, the sound of prayers could be heard. Xiaohua couldn't understand this prayer, but he could feel the sincerity in it. This prayer was low at first, then it became louder. The olive branches, grapes, and other objects that had appeared in the sky previously gradually gave off cold air. Boulders, streams of water, sharp swords, and cross-shaped stars appeared. When the Shitsi stars filled the sky, Zhangjie's praise turned into a hymn. This hymn was different from the one Xiaohua had heard before. It was filled with grief, sadness, disappointment, and helplessness. Moreover, the rhythm of the hymn became increasingly low and silent. It was as if the entire world was filled with despair. All of a sudden, all of the cross-shaped stars glowed with blood-red light. Then, the container filled with holy ointment fell again. A stream of bright red liquid flowed out from the container and poured onto Zhangjie's head. Ayo! Xiaohua was shocked when he saw that the color of the stream was actually bright red. He thought that something strange had happened. Just as he was about to raise his hand to stop it, a pure and holy lamb suddenly appeared at the location of the stream and all the Shitsi stars. This lamb looked very peaceful as it laid there. Its eyes were filled with incomparable compassion. What's going on? Xiaohua was stunned. Looking at the purity and holiness of the lamb, he retracted his hand. Because this holiness was very pure, it had nothing to do with the blood sea. However, just as Xiaohua retracted his hand, the lamb let out a mournful cry. It was filled with disappointment. Blood gushed out from its body, and in a short moment, the blood soaked all the Shitsi stars. Even the holy vessels were filled with the color of blood. The stream turned into blood and flowed down. At the same time, a vast and unparalleled holy power actually rushed out from the trickling blood and pounced toward Xiaohua with a power that was 10,000 times more ferocious than the power to topple the heavens and overturn the earth. Xiaohua didn't have the slightest ability to resist, and was instantly pushed thousands of kilometers away by this holy power. However, what allowed Xiaohua to feel at ease was that even though this holy energy possessed the ability to obliterate the heavens and the earth, the aura within it revealed benevolence, and when it descended onto Xiaohua's golden body, it was a few times gentler than a cool breeze, and it didn't even shake the golden body in the slightest. Xiaohua suddenly understood. He raised his head again and saw that the area within 10,000 li was filled with love. Although the Shitsi stars were filled with the color of blood, this color was completely different from the color of the netherworld's blood sea and the sea of bitterness. A kind of clarity, a kind of kindness, a kind of forgiveness, and an incomparable love came from this color of blood. The entire heaven and earth was like this. Zhang was filled with the color of blood. Wherever the blood flowed, the black threads that Zhang called sin were swept away. What depravity, what blasphemy, what decay, all turned into nothingness in this blood. Boom! When the blood dripped onto Zhang feet, a fresh surge of life emerged from Zhang ankle and rushed against the flow to Zhang entire body. Ta! An obscure holy language came from Zhang mouth. Zhang 7 layers of wings spread open again. Layers of holy flames leaped out from the void like the sun. A huge impatience flower appeared in front of Xiaohua's eyes. This impatience flower bloomed petal by petal. It was incomparably dazzling. Zhang is about to advance. Taoist witch, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Don't let her leave. She might be needed to break the immortal array. Xiaohua squinted his eyes. He also saw that beside Zhang light feather, another light feather was born. However, this light feather only had an outline and was not clear. But this light feather rumbled. Rumble! Thunder immediately fell from the sky. The heaven and earth laws of the Dawn Rain continent fell like a rope, imprisoning all the laws of the Dawn Rain continent. However, following this thunder, tens of thousands of pure white clouds flowed in the sky. An aura that surpassed the heaven and earth landed on Zhang body. Zhang Jie? Xiaohua suddenly spoke. What are you cultivating for? Xiaohua. Zhang Jie did not answer Xiaohua's question. Instead, he said indifferently, You gave me the holy ointment, which is a great kindness. Also, I'll be honest with you. In the container you gave me, other than the holy ointment, there's also the holy blood. The holy blood is supreme in my sacred light realm. I don't know how you got the holy blood in the mortal realm, but I'll remember this kindness. However, kindness is kindness. This is a personal matter. I can't abandon the great love of the sacred Lord for such a personal matter. Higan is the crystallization of the sacred Lord's great love. I can't abandon her. So, Xiaohua, I'm sorry. With that, Zhang Jie raised his hand. An arm as pure as crystal flew across thousands of miles and landed in front of Xiaohua. The slender hand grabbed at Xiaohua with a power that surpassed the heaven and earth. Before the slender hand landed, the space around Xiaohua was already imprisoned. Fellow Taoist. Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Taoist witch and said, Look, you said you wanted her help. Great, now you're attacking her directly. Even so, do you think we're afraid of her? Taoist witch said disapprovingly. If she doesn't agree, we'll beat her until she agrees. Xiaohua naturally would not allow himself to be captured. His figure flashed and tens of thousands of thunderbolts surged around him, shattering the imprisonment force inch by inch. Xiaohua! Zhang Jie's voice sounded like the sound of heaven. Don't struggle. I only want Higan. I won't hurt you. Higan is much more useful in my hands than in yours. Xiaohua faintly smiled, then he raised his hand and patted his head. Boom! Buddhist light soared into the sky. Wherever the Buddhist light fell, it immediately collided with the holy light of 10,000 li radius. Countless, sizzling, Sounds came one after another. At the same time, Xiaohua formed a Buddhist seal with his hand and chanted the name of Buddha. Namo Maitreya Buddha? Then, his Buddhist palm gently blocked Zhang Jie's slender hand. Boom! Another rumbling sound rose into the sky. The entire sky of 10,000 li radius was like boiling water. Buddhist sect. Zhang Jie's slender hand was blocked. However, with the power of the holy light, she was not at a disadvantage. Her crystal-like arm only paused for a moment before it reached out with lightning speed. Zhang Jie was shocked. The anger on his face was even more intense. His reborn hand became even stronger. You're a disciple of the Buddhist sect? So what if I'm a disciple of the Buddhist sect? There's even a soul cultivator witch emperor here. Seeing that the situation was not good, Taoist witch slapped the top of his head. The three corpses in thunder also surged again. The supreme witch body turned into a majestic mountain. An imposing manner that was close to the law of heaven and earth forced the holy light to retreat. Angels can pity the world. Sacred Lord can redeem people with love. Why can't the Buddhist sect save the world with compassion? Why can't the Taoist sect protect the people with compassion? Xiaohua laughed loudly. His voice was like thunder. If the angels of the holy light world are as narrow-minded as you, how can the holy light world be the mortal enemy of the Buddhist kingdom? As Xiaohua's voice sounded, the Buddhist light within thousands of miles spread. The golden body of Namo Maitreya Buddha's statue slowly appeared. However, because the Dawn Rain continent was the realm where Xiaohua had attained fruition, the golden body of the Buddha statue was its original form. As Xiaohua's phoenix eyes slanted, not only did lightning surge in his eyes, they also surged with an indescribable benevolence. An aura that cherished the world and pitied the people of the world surged out from the Buddha light. This aura was clearly much weaker than the holy aura of the holy light realm, but the benevolence in that aura was not the slightest bit inferior to the great love in the holy aura. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-59. What was special was that the Guanyin Bodhisattva was holding the clear water bottle in her left hand. The green permitha was quietly inserted into the clear water bottle. Under the clear water bottle, there was an inexplicable demonic aura supporting the Buddhist item. Indescribable vitality, indescribable power of death, and indescribable harmony of life and death were perfectly presented in the Guanyin Bodhisattva's left hand. You actually created the Namo Merciful Guanyin? Zhang Jie obviously knew about the Namo Merciful Guanyin. Her eyes flashed with surprise. She couldn't help but cover her mouth with her other hand as if she couldn't believe it. However, Zhang Jie's astonishment didn't stop there. Because when Xiaohua's Nanwu Merciful Guanyin Buddha's golden body appeared, although the Buddha's light was very faint, a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared in the boundless heaven and earth thousands of miles away from the holy light. Billions of tiny hair-like crystal objects flew out from all over the earth. These crystal objects just started to look like hair, but in just a few breaths, the hair turned into a trickle, and in just a moment, the trickle turned into a river, and in another moment, the river turned into a river. Angel Zhang Jie was a saint body condensed from the power of faith. She was very sensitive to the power of faith in the heaven and earth. She saw the tiny strands that filled the heaven and earth and couldn't help but open her mouth and exclaim, "Faith? The stream of faith? How is this possible?" Zhang Jie's spirit body stopped in place, and a sense of crisis rose from the bottom of her heart. She had a premonition that if this vast power of faith rushed over, her spirit body would be drowned by this river of faith, and she would be crushed. She hurriedly withdrew her arm. She didn't have time to defeat Xiaohua. She wanted to save herself, but she was still too late. Because in just a blink of an eye, the power of faith that had condensed into a river had turned into a vast ocean, setting off endless waves between heaven and earth and surging violently toward the Namo Merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Guanyin Bodhisattva put his palms together with a compassionate look on his face. He ignored Zhang Jie and slowly knelt down in the air, chanting the name of Buddha. Namo Merciful Buddha, Guanyin Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Namo Buddha, Namo Wufa, Namo Monk, Namo Merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva. Shi. Garavato, 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 Garavato. God of heaven's net, God of earth's net, people leave the calamity, it is difficult to leave the body, all calamities turn into dust. Namo Maha Prajna Paramitha. Along with the recitation of the Guanyin heart mantra, thousands of Buddhas appeared on the left side of the Guanyin Buddha statue. Namo Maitreya Buddha. The Buddha's name was chanted. Sounds of chanting could be heard. Heavenly flowers fell, fairies danced, and dragons roared in the surroundings. The power of faith was like a boundless ocean. Wherever it passed, the thunderous sound caused by Zhangjia's advancement and the thousands of pure white clouds in the sky had already been diluted. Only the aura that surpassed the heavens and the earth still protected the terrified Zhangjie, swaying in the billowing Buddha light like a small boat in the storm. The river of faith that was incomparably powerful in the eyes of others fell on Xiaohua's side and became tamed again. First, it covered Xiaohua's Buddha statue, then like a cheerful little wave, it pounced on the Buddha light around Xiaohua's body. Swish! Behind Xiaohua's head, where there should be light, a vortex the size of a grain of rice quietly appeared. Although this vortex was small, its suction force was extremely strong. As soon as it was born, it immediately sucked in the stream of faith. Woo-woo! As the stream of faith fell into the vortex, a strange whistling sound began to resound between heaven and earth. The chanting of thousands of Buddhas slowly spread, covering the entire sky and the ground. Even the vortex began to expand. In the end, a vortex the size of light behind the head of an ordinary bodhisattva was formed. The endless stream of faith surged into the back of Xiaohua's head and turned into incomparably pure crystal threads that fell into the crystal-like divinity the size of a soybean. Zhangjie used the power of the holy light to struggle bitterly in the ocean of faith. Although the power of the holy blood was incomparably powerful, there were signs of it collapsing in the ocean of faith. Zhangjie chanted the hymn without any panic in his heart. He was just watching the rare miracle in front of him as if he was watching a fire. Hee, let this poor Taoist lend you a hand. Taoist witch's figure appeared from the ocean of faith. As he spoke, a green seal text appeared between his eyebrows. Layers of 3 corpses in lightning turned into streams of light and crashed down, separating Zhangjie's holy light and Xiaohua's Buddha light. Even the 3 corpses in lightning protected Zhangjie. Seeing the lightning fall, the heavy pressure from before suddenly reduced by more than half. Zhangjie's face revealed a smile as he looked at Taoist Witch and said, "Thank you." Taoist Witch looked at Zhangjie's calmness and said curiously, "You're actually not afraid? If Taoist Xiao wants to deal with you, he doesn't need to use any magical powers. He only needs to use the river of faith to completely eliminate you. After all, you're just a spiritual body condensed from the power of faith. The river of faith of the Buddhist sect is your natural nemesis. What's there to be afraid of?" Zhangjie smiled. Destruction is the beginning of rebirth. It's a step that every angel has to go through. We angels are born for love. We are born as slaves of the Holy Lord. We are born to fight for the Holy Lord. When we die, we turn into faith and return to the hands of the Holy Lord. I'm afraid of falling into sin, not being destroyed. Hee, I understand. Taoist Witch nodded. No wonder the holy light realm can be compared to the Buddhist kingdom. The path of faith is indeed powerful. Xiaohua's Buddha fruit is very strange. Seeing that Taoist Witch was protecting him without any intention of harming him, Zhangjie didn't put up any defenses against Taoist Witch. He looked at the whirlpool behind Xiaohua's head and said curiously, "Why doesn't he have a Buddha source? Isn't it said that every Buddha who achieves Buddha fruit has a Buddha source behind their head? Without a Buddha source, how can he be taken to the heavenly gate?" Taoist Witch didn't know what a Buddha source was, but after hearing Zhangjie's words, he already knew that it was the commonly known light. He smiled and said, "If Taoist Xiao has a Buddha source, wouldn't he be taken to the Buddhist kingdom?" Yeah, he achieved the hardest Buddha fruit to achieve, Namo Great Compassion Bodhisattva Buddha fruit. Naturally, he would go to the Buddhist kingdom? Zhang Jie said curiously, if not, why did he achieve the Buddha fruit of Bodhisattva Buddha? Buddha fruit is formed by nature. It's done with the intention and obtained without the intention. Taoist which answered in a low voice, as long as he has a merciful heart, he doesn't care about the Buddhist kingdom or the demon alliance. Ah? Zhang Jie was stunned and blurted out, yeah, I know. Xiaohua is a Taoist cultivator. What? Why did he go to the Buddhist kingdom? Until now, Zhang Jie suddenly realized that Xiaohua was a Taoist cultivator. Even if he had a Buddha fruit, he didn't have light or Buddha source. He couldn't go to the Buddhist kingdom. Zhang Jie wasn't someone who didn't know how to be flexible. Seeing such a situation, he rolled his eyes and made up his mind. A smile appeared on his face. Xiaohua had indeed left a lot of virtue in Dawn Rain Continent. It took no less than 10 days for the stream of faith to rush in majestically like this. Seeing the morning sun rise from the east once again, the Buddhist radiance in the entire sky gradually dimmed. The Buddha light was extinguished. The heavenly lady and the heavenly dragon also left. The heavenly flowers turned into auspicious flowers and fell around the millions of Meng mountains. The clear sound of the wooden fish and the chanting of sutras dissipated. Xiaohua's huge golden Buddha statue fell and shrunk along with the decline of the magnificent scene. Behind Xiaohua's head, the soybean-sized crystal-like godhead had now become even bigger. It looked like the nuts of an ordinary mountain village. At the edge of the godhead, hundreds of millions of thin threads stretched out and disappeared into the void. At the other end of every thin thread was an incomparably devout heart. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Xiaohua chanted the name of Buddha and withdrew his Buddha statue. He returned to his original appearance as a Taoist cultivator. Then, Xiaohua looked at Zhang Jie and said apologetically, I'm sorry. I've destroyed your path back to the sacred light realm. Not only did Xiaohua not blame him for stealing the higan, but he even apologized first. Angel Zhang Jie was upset. He looked at the higan in Xiaohua's hand and whispered, Praise the sacred Lord. It's not your fault. It's all my fault. Then how are you going to return to the sacred light realm? Xiaohua asked again. Don't worry, sacred Lord. Zhang Jie smiled. Although my injuries haven't healed, my strength has already surpassed the laws of heaven and earth in the lost land. After a few more years of recuperation, I only need to reveal the hidden sacred light. The path of light to the sacred light realm will definitely appear again. That's good. Xiaohua grinned and said, if because of this Xiao, an angel was implicated and fell to the mortal world, then this Xiao's sin would be huge. Sigh. Zhang Jie didn't answer Xiaohua's question. Instead, he sighed, I finally understand why you can prove the most difficult Namo Maitreya Buddha fruit in the Buddhist kingdom. Not to mention other things, with the heart to judge others by your own standards and the heart to easily forget the bad intentions of others, you'll definitely be the Guanyin Bodhisattva. It may seem difficult to others, but to me, it's extremely easy. Xiaohua replied, because this is my nature, I don't need to cultivate or pursue 10,000 laws following the heart. Following the heart? Zhang Jie pondered, this seems to be the principle of the devil sect, right? All Taoists are laws. Xiaohua waved his hand, not to mention the devil sect, Taoism, Buddhism, and so on. Perhaps in the end, they're all laws. Xiaohua's words were naturally spoken from the bottom of his heart. He had stolen the good fortune of heaven and earth in the Xingyue Palace and listened to the discussion of Dharma. He might not be able to speak of the secrets of Dharma, but a few words were enough for Zhang Jie to swallow. Zhang Jie's spiritual body trembled, and he asked curiously, all Taoists are laws? Shouldn't it be that all Taoists are laws? That law is a spell, a divine ability. In Xiaohua's eyes, there was no difference between the sacred light realm and the Buddhist kingdom. He answered very naturally, this law is the law, the origin. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5060. Even Zhang Jie, who had begun to evolve into a two-winged angel, could only vaguely answer, perhaps, Xiaohua wanted to say more to Zhang Jie, hoping that she could comprehend and perhaps gain something. However, when he saw that Zhang Jie's strength was not inferior to his and that he had the Higan in his hand, he tactfully shut his mouth. Then, Xiaohua looked at Taoist Witch and turned to Zhang Jie. Zhang Jie, I can't give you the Higan. Okay, I know. Zhang Jie was straightforward. Before Xiaohua could finish, he immediately nodded and said, take it. Xiaohua was shocked and looked at Taoist Witch. Taoist Witch shrugged, indicating that he knew nothing. That's strange. Xiaohua said in disbelief, you were trying to snatch it just now. Why are you giving up now? My strength hasn't increased either. Why don't you guess? Zhang Jie saw that Xiaohua was actually the Guanyin Bodhisattva of the Buddhist kingdom and let his guard down completely. Xiaohua thought for a while and understood. He nodded and said, I know. Although I'm a Taoist cultivator, I have another identity as the Guanyin Bodhisattva of the Buddhist sect. If the Buddhist kingdom's Bodhisattva sees the Higan in my hand, they might not snatch it away. Because I'm a Taoist cultivator, I'll go to the immortal world after I ascend. The Higan will also be in the immortal world and won't fall into the hands of the Buddhist kingdom. Your holy light world can rest assured. Therefore, the Higan in my hand is the most suitable. Your holy light world won't snatch it away, and neither will the Buddhist kingdom. You're right. Zhang Jie nodded. But there are still 2 reasons missing? There are 2 reasons? Tell me. Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and asked. First, in this lost land, my strength is inferior to yours, so I can't snatch it away. Furthermore, if it were an ordinary cultivator, even if they hid the Permitha in their body or in their storage pouch, I would still be able to sense its aura. However, the Permitha is in your hands. I can't sense its location at all. Even if I subdue you, I won't be able to find it. If that's the case, how am I supposed to snatch it? Zhang Jie answered. Secondly, Namo Great Merciful Guanyin is famous in the Buddhist kingdom and the Holy Light realm. He is also a bodhisattva respected by the angels in the Holy Light realm. With the Nirvana realm in the hands of Guanyin Bodhisattva, we can rest assured. You will only use the Permitha to save the people, but you will not use it to kill the angels of the Holy Light realm. Speaking of which, I thought of a third reason. Facing such a pure spiritual body, Xiaohua didn't have any other thoughts. He only asked curiously, what other reason is there? Because you have Higan. You can kill me anytime you want. Zhang Jie actually told Xiaohua about his shortcomings. Angels like us aren't afraid of being killed, but there's no need for us to court death, right? All right. Xiaohua was completely defeated. He touched his nose and said, I really don't know what you are thinking. You actually let me know that Higan is the nemesis of angels. Are you really not afraid that I will use Higan to kill you? Zhang Jie looked at Xiaohua and said, Of course I have to tell you. You have Higan. Not only are we angels looking for it, but those sin angels are also looking for it. It is more troublesome for the sin angels to get Higan than for the Buddhist kingdom. You have so many rivers of faith. You can use Higan at will and kill more sin angels. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said helplessly, I thought you were stupid. Now it seems I am the stupid one. No one is more stupid than anyone else, and no one is smarter than anyone else. Zhang Jie said. His wings of light began to tremble. It looked like he was about to leave. Don't be anxious. Xiaohua hurriedly raised his hand and said, I have a few things to ask you. Zhang Jie said curiously, You actually have something to ask me? Your believers are all over the lost land. Xiaohua smiled and said, Since you gave me Higan, you should tell me how to use it, right? Zhang Jie was stunned and said, Can't you already use Higan? Why do you need me to tell you? Besides, I don't even know how to use Higan. Then, Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, You should at least tell me how Higan can save lives, right? Zhang Jie still shook his head and said, In this world, only holy spirits can bring people back to life. Because they have the breath of a living person. Higan might be able to save a human soul from hell, but this soul has already been tainted with the aura of death. Without fresh life, without the breath of a living person, it is impossible for him to be revived. Xiaohua thought for a moment and nodded, Since that is the case, I will not ask you any more. Oh, right, it is normal for you to bring Du Peng and escape from Mount Meru. But why did you bring Bai Fei with you? What about the wings of light on Bai Fei's back? Where did they go? Bai Fei? You know Bai Fei too? Zhang Jie asked curiously. Of course. When I met Bai Fei, you were still in the Yilin continent. Xiao Hua nodded and said, Bai Fei was originally a disciple of Taoism in the Lost Land. Damn it. He lied to me again. Zhang Jie, who was as pure as an angel, could not help but curse in a low voice. Such an ugly human. Why did I believe him? He did not lie to you. He was using you to cultivate. Xiao Hua replied indifferently. Zhang Jie snorted and said, That day, when you used Higan for the last time in the Lost Land, I sensed it in the Yilin continent and immediately went to the Wuming Mountains. It was at that time that I met Du Peng. But at that time, I did not pay attention to this demon. I wanted to use my own strength to pass through the Wuming Mountains. Unfortunately, Mount Meru was the center of the 4 continents and contained the power of 3,000 worlds. It changed all the laws of the Lost Land, so I could not find the flaw of the Buddha array. The most despicable thing was that the Buddha array used the nether aura of the immemorial sorcerer tribe to disguise the aura of Mount Meru and the aura of the bitter sea of the Buddhist kingdom into the nether blood sea. Even I could not distinguish it, so after several years of trying, I could only give up. I was ready to go back and think of another way. On my way back, I met Bai Fei, who was injured by a soul beast. I saw that his life was in danger, so I saved him from the soul beast's attack. However, I did not like the human race, let alone the male cultivators of Taoism. So, I casually placed him in a secret place and let him recuperate on his own. I was ready to leave. At that time, Bai Fei knelt down and told me his tragic life. He said that he was a disciple of a hermit who had never left the Wuming Mountains and had never seen the outside world. His master was killed by a soul warrior, but he did not want to take revenge. He wanted me to bring him out of the Wuming Mountains. I heard that he was pitiful and his injuries were serious. If I did not help him, he might not be able to come out of the Wuming Mountains. So, I gave him a pair of light feathers and taught him the method of using them. I told him to practice on his own and let him fly out of the Wuming Mountains. When I flew out of the Wuming Mountains, I met Du Peng again. It seemed like he had been guarding the place. When he saw me flying out, he stood in front of me and said that he had a way to help me pass through the Wuming Mountains. Although I hated the devil race more, I had to compromise for the sake of Higan. I discussed with him about how to pass through the Wuming Mountains. When I heard that he did not need me to do anything and only needed to help him pass through the Wuming Mountains, I was a little suspicious. Later on, I tried to find other ways and even used some tricks to get some information from the leader of the failed Immortal Alliance. However, after entering and exiting the Wuming Mountains a few times, I finally gave up trying and decided to work with Du Peng. However, I did not expect to see you and Bai Fei among the human cultivators who went to the Lost Land. I was surprised, so I asked him about it. He said that he wanted to cultivate in the Lost Land and did not want to fight with the cultivators of Taoism Alliance. He wanted to find some peace. I did not mind. When you were suppressed by Mount Sumeru, I did not panic. Mount Sumeru was too powerful, so I could not save you. However, I had many ways to deal with the Buddha formation. When I saved Du Peng as promised, I also saw Bai Fei abandoning the girl named Yun. Although I didn't want to save Bai Fei, he had already seen me and called for help. As an angel, I couldn't leave him in the lurch. Besides, since I had saved the devil race, it was not a big deal to save another human. When I got out of the Buddha formation, I immediately left Du Peng and Bai Fei behind because I felt that I could not resist the burden of sin. If I stayed with these disgusting humans and demons, I would not be able to resist the urge to kill them. Just as I was desperately searching for the Paramitha, you actually waved the Paramitha. Am I not here now? Xiao Hua knew that angels would not lie, so he nodded and said, So, you don't know where Du Peng and Bai Fei are? Yes, I don't know. However, the place I flew out of was not far from the edge of Wuming Mountain Range. The two of them should be able to leave Wuming Mountain Range easily. Zhang Jie answered. Taoist which suddenly asked, Zhang Jie, did you put Du Peng and Bai Fei together? Of course not. Zhang Jie answered matter-of-factly. Du Peng is from the devil race and Bai Fei is from the human race. I did not dare to put them together. Sigh, angels are angels. Xiao Hua sighed. Previously, I did not have a good impression of the sacred light realm, but you gave me a new understanding of the sacred light realm. By the way, Zhang Jie, how did you come to the Yilin continent? Taoist which suddenly asked. This. Zhang Jie was a little hesitant, as if he had something to say. Hee, you think too much. Xiao Hua hurriedly said, Taoist which only asked how you came to this realm. He did not ask how you were injured. I see. Zhang Jie thought for a moment and said happily, I saw a spatial crack suddenly appear in the void, and the laws of heaven and earth inside were weaker than the laws of heaven and earth in the sacred light realm. I was looking for a place to rest, so I casually came in. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all forms of support. Thank you to Chuan Tong, and Only Smoking Half a Cigarette of Gold Nanjing, for your support. Chapter 5061. All right. Seeing how relaxed Zhang Jie was, Xiao Hua shrugged and smiled. Then do you know why I'm in such a hurry to come to the lost place? Aren't you a Taoist cultivator from the lost place? Since you're of the same origin as Bai Fei, of course you have to return to the lost place. Zhang Jie said without hesitation. Yes and no. Xiao Hua stopped smiling and said, I'm in such a hurry to return because I want to save billions of lives. What? Billions of lives? Zhang Jie was also stunned and asked curiously, Xiao Hua, do you have such strength? It doesn't matter if I have the strength or not, as long as I have the heart. Xiao Hua replied, I don't know what's going on in the holy light realm, but since you're willing to save Bai Fei, I feel that you can't be left out on this journey to save billions of lives. But Zhang Jie's tone was a little hesitant. I'm just a servant of the Holy Lord. Can I really save billions of lives? How do you know if you don't try? Taoist which smiled. How about you say you can't after Taoist Xiao finishes? All right. Although she was an angel, Zhang Jie wasn't as confident in saving the world as Xiao Hua thought, so she just nodded blankly. Xiao Hua didn't hide anything from Zhang Jie. He explained the situation of the 3 continents in detail, then looked at Zhang Jie with an expectant expression. So that's how it is. Zhang Jie didn't look particularly shocked, which was very different from the reactions of the Shaman King and Elder Wu. She only nodded, and even said with some hesitation, Then, what can I do? Xiao Hua was speechless when he heard this. He thought for a while and smiled. Oh right, Zhang Jie, I seem to have asked you a question just now, but you haven't answered it yet. What question? Zhang Jie was stunned. Xiao Hua looked at Zhang Jie and asked word by word, Why do you cultivate? Why do I cultivate? Zhang Jie seemed to have never thought about this question. She stared blankly at Xiao Hua and didn't speak for half a cup of tea's time. Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry and also waited quietly. Finally, Zhang Jie opened her mouth, but she actually asked, Xiao Hua, what's the purpose of your cultivation? Huh? Xiao Hua laughs. Speaking of the purpose of my cultivation, there are some things that are hard to say. Because my soul was searched, my early memories were shattered. Although I'm slowly recovering them now, they're still incomplete. However, I vaguely remember that my initial goal was to become stronger so that I could protect my family. Xiao Hua narrated some of the things in his memory, and even talked about how he came to the 3 continents. He said, This Xiao doesn't dare to say that my cultivation is not for myself, but every time I can rely on my own strength to help others, I will feel happy from the bottom of my heart. Zhang Jie smiled sweetly. Although angels do not have a sense of self, they only have the Holy Lord and believers. However, good and evil can still be differentiated. When you can do good, why not do it? Ha! Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, With fellow Taoist? Oh no, you can't be considered a fellow Taoist. In terms of doing good, I can be considered a fellow Taoist. Zhang Jie rarely agreed to be called a fellow Taoist. Good. Taoist sorcerer also rarely praised, fellow Taoist. With this choice, there will definitely be good results in the future. With fellow Taoist support, this Xiao has more confidence in breaking the formation. Xiao Hua was overjoyed, but Zhang Jie's words almost caused Xiao Hua's jaw to drop. She said, "Of course, while doing good deeds, I am also willing to destroy the Buddha Kingdom's Buddha formation and the Buddha Kingdom's plans." Xiao Hua's figure swayed twice. He was a little scared. If Zhang Jie met the Maitreya Buddha, would the two of them fight to the death? Fortunately, after Zhang Jie finished speaking, he frowned and said, "However, Xiao Hua, my injuries have not healed. I still need to borrow the holy oil and holy blood to repair my spiritual body. I can't help you for the time being." "It doesn't matter." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and said, "There is no hurry now. This Xiao still hasn't found any clues to break the formation. It won't be too late for you to make a move when the formation is broken." "That's good." Zhang Jie raised his hand and pointed at the utensil above his head. That utensil rumbled and fell into the upper realm's light feather. The light feather swayed and the utensil and other things disappeared. Zhang Jie spread out his light feather and said, "Then I will leave first. When you are breaking the formation, just call me." "Okay, take care, I won't send you off." Xiao Hua raised his hand. However, just as Xiao Hua raised his hand, he suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, "Do you have a communication talisman?" "Huh." Zhang Jie laughed loudly. The light feather trembled and in a moment, he disappeared into the distant sky. "What is she laughing about?" Xiao Hua looked at Taoist Witch in confusion and said, "She doesn't have a communication talisman. The Xiaoyu continent is so big. Where are we going to find her?" "Do you still need to find her?" Taoist Witch said with a smile, "Just let her find you." Seeing Taoist Witch's gaze fall on his left hand, Xiao Hua touched his nose and blinked his eyes, saying, "That's right. With this Permitha, Zhang Jie will come whenever he is called. Why do I need to leave a communication talisman?" After saying that, the proud Xiao Hua kept the clear water bottle in his Niwen palace. "Fellow Taoist, are we still going back to the Huda stronghold?" Taoist Witch looked around and asked. "Don't." When Xiao Hua thought of Ji-man's white hair in front of the Hutu stronghold, his face was full of worry. "We can't revive Xian. Why should we go back? Seeing Ji-man cry for no reason, we are also worried." Taoist Witch sighed. "That's right. Everyone has different opportunities. Even if we put in the same amount of effort, the rewards might not be the same. Ziming sacrificed a lot for Zai, and Ji-man also sacrificed a lot for Xian. However, Zai was revived, but Xian can't be revived. Moreover, Xian was possessed by the demons. Even his soul is incomplete. He might not be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation. We can't tell this to Ji-man. That may be the case, but don't forget." Xiao Hua said solemnly, "Zai sacrificed himself for his sister. It's filial piety. The Huda great god only used I to fulfill Ziming's dream. What about Xian? Even if Ji-man cried and went blind, the Huda great god might not care about him." Taoist Witch nodded and said, "We don't know what happened to Xian when he was alive. Perhaps he was too weak, so the demons took advantage of him? We can only think from the positive side." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "But it's already a fact. What's the point of talking about it now? Let's leave the Million Meng Mountains first before we discuss where to go." "Aren't we going directly to the heaven, earth, and mortal peaks?" Taoist Witch asked curiously. "Are we going to push down the heaven, earth, and mortal peaks?" Xiao Hua rolled his eyes at Taoist Witch. "Those are the Taiching sect's peaks. We don't have any evidence to push them down. What's the difference between that and robbing someone's home?" "Hee, that's true. There are also Taiching sect disciples cultivating on the peaks." Taoist Witch replied embarrassedly. Xiao Hua said to Taoist Witch while flying, "Actually, I feel that I'm quite cowardly sometimes. I'm already the supreme being of the human race, but I still have to be cautious when doing things. If it were Zhang Qingxiao, she would definitely rush up and push them down regardless of the consequences. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip." Chapter 5062. Hee, I wonder how your second senior brother, Zhang Qingxiao, is doing now. Taoist which laughed. Actually, if you release your divine sense, you might be able to see him. Xiaoyu continent is a lost land. Compared to Yilin continent, hidden immortal continent, and so on, it's still much smaller. Is it necessary to do that? Xiaohua asked. If you want to do it, then do it. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. I'm just saying. If you want to see it, then go ahead. I don't think anyone in Xiaoyu continent can stop you. If you don't want to see it, then don't look. After all, who wouldn't understand the feeling of being close to home? Ha! Xiaohua clapped and said, I didn't expect the Witch Emperor to be so interesting. Taoist which shrugged and laughed. Am I interesting? The interesting person is down there. Hearing this, Xiaohua lowered his head and looked at the ground. A few hundred miles away, there was a huge deep pit that looked like a big eye on the ground. Light smoke was seeping out of the deep pit and slowly drifting in the air like a cloud. Looking from afar, it looked like a watery eye, which was quite strange. Isn't this the drifting cloud lake between Million Mountain and Huan Country? About 1,000 miles away from the drifting cloud lake, a few cultivators were activating their magic treasures to fight. Although a voice sounded far away, when it entered Xiaohua's ears, it was like a thunder hammer. Where did you come from? Take my whip. Li Zongbao, senior brother Li. Xiaohua couldn't help but burst into tears. His figure turned into a cloud above the drifting cloud lake and instantly landed on top of everyone's head. It was a place where a few mountain peaks converged. As they were far away from Mount Meng, the unique desolate coldness of the Huan Kingdom had gradually spread throughout the mountain range. Amidst the rising and falling mountain ridges, speckles of ice and snow were like scars on the head of a scab, looking very ugly. On top of a layer of ice that reflected the pale light of the sun, a petite girl in a sword outfit was holding a long sword in her hand. She bent her waist and stood on top of the ice. Looking at the girl's slightly twitching mouth and the blood dripping down her right leg, one could tell that this girl was seriously injured. This female sword cultivator has delicate eyebrows and gentle eyes. Isn't she the Guyu that Xiaohua encountered in the sword battle earlier? In the midair in front of Guyu, a Taoist cultivator with snow-white hair and a straight back was holding a whip in his hand. His eyes were bright and full of expression as he looked ahead. Who else could it be but senior martial brother Li Zongbao that Xiaohua was thinking about? Li Zongbao was much older than he was several hundred years ago. It seemed that even the rejuvenation pill couldn't stop him from longing for Kaizhuoxia. However, no matter how much time had passed, no matter how ruthless reality was, it couldn't extinguish the fire in Li Zongbao's eyes and the obsession in his heart. Just like his straight back, he was back in the day. The kill immortal whip in his hand was as domineering as it was in the past. Under the mountain-like shadow of this spirit tool, the four people surrounding Li Zongbao and Guyu had no choice but to avoid the sharp edge and flew up high. Li Zongbao. When the shadow of the immortal slaying whip flashed by, a man in a black cloak said coldly, "Surrender! How can you and Guyu be our match? Besides, we won't take your life. We just want to take Guyu back to the Void Heaven Sword School. Of course, if you want to go, I won't stop you. After all, this matter is related to you." You. Li Zongbao pointed at the man with the immortal slaying whip and said, "You, who is neither yin nor yang, have always been haunting us. Guyu and I are innocent. We are just traveling together. Others won't say anything, but why are you so talkative? If you didn't sow discord, why would the Void Heaven Sword School send people to capture Guyu?" Li Zongbao was usually a man of few words, but today he spoke so much. Obviously, he was very angry in his heart. "Senior brother Li." Guyu forced himself to stand up, raised the sharp sword in his hand and shouted, "This matter has nothing to do with you. It is a private matter within the sword school. You can go, less nonsense." Li Zongbao glanced at Guyu, then looked at the other man and said, "If this person wasn't here, I might have let you go. However, there is a heavenly demon sect disciple among the disciples of the Void Heaven Sword School. How can I let you go without worry?" Hearing this, Guyu's face unconsciously changed. He looked at the man. This man's face was as white as jade. He seemed to be a sword cultivator disciple. In his hand he was holding a flame-like long sword to resist Li Zongbao's immortal slaying whip. Suddenly he heard Li Zongbao say that he was a heavenly demon sect disciple. He couldn't help but be surprised. Then he laughed and said, "Li Zongbao, I am Sun Luo from the Xian Sword School. I met senior brother Qin during the experiential learning, so we came together to take a look. Of course, if you don't feel at ease with Guyu going with me, you might as well go together." Martial Uncle Qin. Guyu didn't doubt him. He looked at the other first-grade sword cultivator and begged, "Since you want to capture this junior can go back with Martial Uncle Qin. Please don't make things difficult for senior brother Li." The sword cultivator named Martial Uncle Qin was a short man. He wasn't much taller than Guyu. However, when he stood there, a sword aura rushed out from his body from time to time. It really was like a short sword. "Guyu." Martial Uncle Qin glanced at Li Zongbao, then at Guyu and said, "You are a famous junior disciple of the Void Heaven Sword School. In just a few hundred years, you have set foot into the third-grade illusory sword school. Your reputation has already spread throughout the major sword schools of the Huan country. However, you can't keep yourself clean. Hanging out with this disciple of the Extreme Happiness School is quite bad for the reputation of the Void Heaven Sword School." Without waiting for Martial Uncle Qin to finish speaking, Guyu's face was filled with shame and anger. He shouted, "Martial Uncle Qin, after the sword war in the early years, we sword cultivators occupied the Sky Patrol City. Since then, there was no longer a sword tomb barrier between the Huan country and the three countries. Our sword cultivator disciples can directly enter the three countries. In the past few hundred years, I don't know how many sword cultivator disciples have traveled to the three countries. I also don't know how many Dao cultivator disciples have come to the Huan country for experiential learning. I don't know, Fan, why does the sword master's gaze fall on this junior, a little sword cultivator? This is the sword master's verbal order. I don't know the reason." Martial Uncle Qin faintly replied, "Just go back with me. I won't make things difficult for Li Zongbao. Moreover, as you can see, it's not me making things difficult for him, it's him making things difficult for me." Alas, seeing this, Guyu put away his flying sword and turned to Li Zongbao, saying, "Zongbao, let me indulge this once. I've been with you for so long, but you've always been so cold to me. I know you still miss Sister Zhuxia, but she has already left. You may not like me, but you need a new life. I hope that after I leave, you can throw away the burden in your heart. After all, the past is the past, and you have a better future. You can't go." Li Zongbao's face was as calm as water. He was not moved by Guyu's tenderness, but he still said calmly. Guyu was overjoyed and hurriedly shouted, "Zongbao, so? You can't call me Zongbao. Just call me senior brother." Li Zongbao was still like a stubborn stone and replied, "If I don't agree, no one can take anyone away from me." "In that case, Li Zongbao," Yiyu coldly said, "then don't blame me for being impolite." "Ha!" Li Zongbao laughed. "Yiyu, how can I not know what you're thinking? You know it's impossible for me to hand Guyu over to Void Heaven Sword School, but you still instigated the disciples of Void Heaven Sword School to come here. Isn't your purpose to kill me? Come, why don't you fight with me for 300 rounds? While speaking, Li Zongbao activated the immortal slaughtering whip in his hand, turning it into a huge dragon and pouncing towards Yiyu. Seeing the dragon-like whip shadows, each of which had the strength of a nascent soul cultivator, Yiyu was shocked. While controlling his flying sword to resist, he thought to himself, "Damn it, why does this Li Zongbao's cultivation base become so strong every time I see him? Before, he wasn't my opponent, but now, in just a few hundred years, he has surpassed me. This guy must have found some kind of opportunity in the Meng Mountains. If I can't capture him and interrogate him today, I'm afraid I won't have another chance in the future." Although Yiyu also had the strength of a first-grade sword transformation realm cultivator, he didn't transform into a sword and was no match for Li Zongbao's spirit treasure. Boom, boom, boom. The whip shadows hit Yiyu's flying sword and immediately knocked it back. Yiyu's face turned pale. He flipped his hand again and a bell-like soul tool appeared in his hand. Seeing wisps of black gas seeping out from the gaps of the bell, Li Zongbao knew it was powerful and didn't dare to get too close. He waved his hand again and the immortal slaughtering whip struck towards martial Uncle Qin of Void Heaven Sword School and Sun Luo of Xianjian Sect. Sun Luo of the Xianjian Sect smiled when he saw the immortal slaughtering whip split into two and fall towards him. Moreover, the whip shadows were much more powerful than ordinary magical treasures. He turned his head and looked at martial Uncle Qin of Void Heaven Sword School. The two of them exchanged glances and then slapped their heads at the same time. Buzz buzz. The sound of swords suddenly rang out. Countless sword energies rushed out from their bodies and turned into swords. The two of them were about to turn into swords and attack Li Zongbao together. However, at this moment, the silhouette of Sun Luo from the Xianjian sect trembled as the sword qi around him abruptly dissipated. His silhouette actually broke free from the Xianjian sect, as a look of astonishment appeared on his jade-like face. However, it only lasted for a moment before he took a deep breath. Buzz. Sword energies rose again. Woo. Martial Uncle Qin and Sun Luo flew up almost at the same time. Their huge flying swords gave off a sharp sword intent and rushed towards the immortal slaughtering whip's shadow. Boom. Martial Uncle Qin's flying sword hit the immortal slaughtering whip first. With a powerful roar, martial Uncle Qin's flying sword was defeated. Martial Uncle Qin's face was filled with shock as he retreated from the sword. However, he was not worried because Sun Luo's flying sword had already hit the other shadow of the immortal slaughtering whip. As for Li Zongbao, because he had used the immortal slaughtering whip, his face was slightly red. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe at Qidian, vote for it, give it a tip, and Chapter 5063. But just when martial Aunt Qin thought victory was at hand, Sun Luo's flying sword suddenly soared into the sky, dodged the shadow of the kill immortal whip, and then directly stabbed at Yu who was holding the soul weapon. Moreover, a sharp sword sound came from the flying sword. Gu Yu, quickly kill Lu Su. Chong Taishu didn't send out the sword master command at all. Qin Nongshue's target is the spiritual weapon in Li Zongbao's hand. Gu Yu was stunned. However, she only hesitated for a moment and immediately threw the flying sword from her hand, stabbing at another Illusory Heaven Sword School disciple who was also at the 3rd grade of the Illusory Heaven Sword School. Junior Martial Sister Gu Yu. The Illusory Heaven Sword School disciple with the 3rd stage illusory sword was naturally the Lu Su mentioned by Sun Luo. Seeing Gu Yu's flying sword coming at him, he couldn't help but reveal a lustful expression. He said with a smile, "You were injured by martial Uncle Yi, so how can you be my opponent? Didn't you hear what Sun Luo said? Martial Aunt Qin's target is Li Zongbao's magic weapon. It has nothing to do with you. Obediently take back your flying sword and return to the sword school with me. I will ask martial Aunt Qin to plead for you." Bah! Seeing the expression in Lu Su's eyes, Gu Yu immediately understood his intention. She spat. Looking at the weak sword intent of the flying sword, she clenched her teeth and rushed at Lu Su with sword light all over her body. Seeing Gu Yu's figure also turning into a sword, Lu Su said in surprise, "Damn, you know the secret sword transformation skill?" With that, Lu Su hurriedly stopped looking down on her and waved his hands. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dozens of flying swords appeared out of thin air and stabbed at Gu Yu who had turned into a sword. It turned out to be the chain sword technique of the Illusory Heaven Sword School. The sword intent gushing out from the dozens of flying swords was like a wave higher than the previous one, drowning Gu Yu who had turned into a sword. Boom boom boom. The sound of the sword intent being annihilated constantly came. Lu Su's cultivation was obviously higher than Gu Yu's. Although Gu Yu had the power of the sword transformation skill and the sword intent was like a wave being torn apart by Gu Yu's petite and exquisite figure gradually got out of the sword. Seeing Gu Yu's figure, Lu Su's eyes flashed with more bestiality. He growled and a suppressed voice came out of his throat. "Gu Yu, you're not my opponent. Now that you've turned into a sword, you've injured your foundation, why don't..." Then, the sword, a small golden sword of a few inches in his chest, was forced, a bloody hole of several inches in the hole's heart. And in the hole, A few inches his hand was forced. A few inches wide bloody sword was a few inches was forced sword. N sword SS swords? S sword uses sword several inches. Damn it, how could I forget about yours invisible sword? Lu Su lowered his head and looked at the wound that was bleeding nonstop. He turned his hand and actually wanted to grab the golden sword. But before the sword light in Lu Su's hand fell, the golden sword immediately swam away like a fish and disappeared again in a moment. Since you've come, there's no need to leave. Lu Su roared and opened his mouth. King. A yellow-colored sword chi spurted out and immediately shrouded the surrounding 10 feet. Sword light overflowed and the golden sword's body was revealed again. Looking at Guyu again, hers was even more staggering. Blood was flowing out from the wound on her leg. Although Lu Su's flying sword was blocked by her, that flying sword was like a venomous snake that was ready to attack again. Li Zongbao was a little stunned. He didn't expect Sun Luo to suddenly attack Night Rain. The immortal slaughtering whip lightened and actually missed. He was a little hesitant, unsure if this was a trap. However, there was no time for Li Zongbao to hesitate. After Qin Nongshue's expression changed drastically, she sneered again. She glanced at Sun Luo and ignored him. Instead, she looked at Li Zongbao and said, I didn't expect that Li Zongbao, who is said to hate evil, would collude with me, a sword practitioner. I just don't quite understand. Since that's the case, can you still get any benefits? After saying that, Qin Nongxue transformed into a sword again. The sword intent here was like a snowstorm in a fierce wind, instantly covering the surrounding area. Clusters of sword intent fell towards Li Zongbao with piercing coldness. So what if I'm a demonic cultivator? Li Zongbao stopped hesitating and said coldly, at least I'm 100 times better than you sanctimonious people. After that, Li Zongbao waved the immortal slaying whip forcefully again. A wave of whip shadows broke Qin Nongshue's sword intent instantly. What a great immortal slaying whip! Qin Nongxue said the name of the spiritual weapon and smiled. It's a pity that it's in your hands. It really taints the power of this spiritual weapon. As she said that, the sword intent reappeared. She had already seen the weakness of Li Zongbao's immortal slaughtering whip. She only urged the sword intent to lure Li Zongbao to use the immortal slaughtering whip. She didn't get too close. However, just as Qin Nongxue finished speaking, there was a soft sound. Amidst the rumbling of the whip shadows and the sword intent, a dragon-like immortal slaughtering whip quietly appeared on Qin Nongshue's back. Although Qin Nongxue had already noticed it and tried her best to dodge, under the power of the spiritual weapon, her left arm was still hit by the immortal slaughtering whip. The area where Sun Luo's spectral sword had been was suddenly filled with a chilling coldness. Strands of dark green light began to appear in the air, and the sword on Sun Luo's upper body began to flicker rapidly as if there was an invisible gale blowing past. Ayo ayo! Sun Luo roared in a low voice. His face showed that he was in pain, and large beads of sweat dripped down from his forehead. Sun Luo used his sword intent to block the attack of the soul weapon. The fire soul sword intent of the flying sword was unable to block the ghost sword intent. With the help of the soul armament, Night Rain's sword aura was becoming more and more rampant. The ghostly that was hidden within the sword hair was already beginning to reveal itself. Although the ghost heads weren't fully formed yet, they were already beginning to devour the fire soul. Pooh! Sun Luo's figure retreated slightly. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a jet of black demonic energy. A palm-sized white bone flag flew out. Damn it! You really are a disciple of the devil school. Yiyu saw the demonic energy and couldn't help but curse in a low voice. However, the more it was like this, the more confused he was. Li Zongbao had clearly exposed Sun Luo's identity, but Sun Luo still wanted to risk his life to help Li Zongbao. There must be a secret that he didn't know. Sun Luo summoned the bone banner, spat a mouthful of blood essence into it, and then waved it. Woo-woo! Ghostly winds rose, and countless ghostly shadows rushed out of the bone banner, majestically rushing towards Yiyu. Of course, Yiyu didn't dare to be negligent. He activated his flying sword to fight, and at the same time, he shook the bell to kill Sun Luo. For a time, the entire space of more than 100 zhang was filled with ghostly wails and howls. Waves of ghost and demonic energy rushed out disorderly, and the already cold mountain peak became even colder. Sun Luo took out the bone flag just as Qin Nongxue was about to risk everything to kill Li Zongbao. Seeing that Li Zongbao was about to be stabbed by the flying sword, a cold voice in the air said, "Qin Nongxue, you want to kill someone in front of me? You're really tired of living." Following this sound, a dense demonic shadow suddenly surged about 100 feet in front of Qin Nongshue's head. Then, there was the sound of a wooden fish being struck. A bone ball that was several feet in size charged out from the demonic shadow. The bone ball had scriptures that seemed to be completely engraved on it. However, black qi seeped out from these scriptures. When the black qi landed in the air, it let out a whimper and smashed towards Qin Nongxue like a meteor chasing after the moon. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 5064. Qin Nongxue was not a fool. Just like Night Rain, when he saw Sun Luo suddenly change sides, he released his divine sense to investigate. Since they were unable to discover anything strange, they had to be cautious and leave some leeway to prepare for any changes. Now that the change happened, Qin Nongxue wasn't surprised. He laughed and said, "Good. This old man wants to see which sect master of the heavenly demon sect you are." As he spoke, he suddenly turned around. Ignoring the injury on his left arm, he once again became one with the sword and turned into a sword light that pierced towards the bone ball. Sword cultivators paid the most attention to sharpness and bravery. Qin Nongshue's body and sword as one gave him a feeling of invincibility. The cold air and snow around him were all absorbed by his sword energy. In the blink of an eye, the flying sword had already pierced through the bone ball. The sharpness of the sword immediately pierced through the bone ball. With a loud bang, the bone ball exploded and countless demons flew out. They looked extremely panicked. Qin Nongxue didn't care about these demons at all. The sword light didn't decrease in momentum and turned into a rainbow that pierced towards the bone ball. However, just as Qin Nongxue rushed through the devil qi, there was a sudden turn. The sword light suddenly rushed towards the mountain peak. Boom! Qin Nongshue's sword light pierced into the void and made a roaring sound. A faint black figure flew out from the roaring sound like a wisp of smoke. A tall and thin young man with delicate features appeared with surprise on his face. This young man was wearing a scholarly robe and was holding a magic treasure that looked like a scroll in his hand. However, the magic treasure was dim and there was an obvious sword mark on it. The young man flew out. He was still shocked and shouted, "How did you find my hiding place?" "Ah." Qin Nongxue looked up to the sky and laughed. He raised his hand and pointed at the young man and said, "Demon brat, don't forget that this old man is a swordsman of the Void Heaven Sword School. My Void Heaven Sword School is famous for the invisible sword. If this old man couldn't see your body hiding in the void, how could I cultivate the invisible sword?" Qin Nongxue laughed and didn't fall for the young man's trick. He turned around again and rushed towards Li Zongbao. Lu Su only had the strength of a third-grade illusory sword. How could he be a match for Li Zongbao? Fortunately, Qin Nongxue was fast enough to save Lu Su from Li Zongbao's immortal slaying whip at the critical moment. When Li Zongbao saw that there was a helping hand, he didn't force her too much. Holding the kill immortal whip, he first protected Guyu and looked at the young man with a puzzled face. As for Sun Luo from the Xianjian school, even with his bone banner, he wasn't a match for Night Rain's soul armament. When he saw the young man flying out, he decided to block for a while before hurriedly flying back. Paying respects to Vice Sect Leader Yi. Since Sun Luo had already revealed his identity, there was no need for him to hold back anymore. He flew up to the young man and bowed deeply. "Please rise." The so-called Vice Sect Leader Yi very politely raised his hand and kindly said, "You have the greatest merit in this matter. I will definitely report this to the sect leader." "I don't dare." Sun Luo was obviously confused, but he didn't dare to ask too much. He hurriedly replied, "This is all thanks to Vice Sect Master. If not for Vice Sect Master's timely reminder, I would have made a big mistake." "Haha, don't worry, the ignorant are not guilty. Our sect leader is very magnanimous." Vice Sect Leader Yi laughed loudly with the aura of a formidable person. "Vice Sect Leader Yi?" When Yi heard Sun Luo calling this young man Vice Sect Leader Yi, she was first stunned, then whispered to the young man. After all, there weren't many people with the surname Yi in this world. Yi was a little curious about the origin of this young Vice Sect leader. However, when Yi saw the young man's appearance, she couldn't help but be slightly stunned and exclaimed, "You?" The Vice Sect Leader Yi turned to look at Yi with a harmless smile on his face and asked, "Master Yi, it's been a few hundred years. It's rare that you still remember this little one. However, the person you remember shouldn't be this little one, right? It should be this little one's father." Damn it. When Yi heard this, she immediately understood and cursed in a low voice. "I understand now. You're Yin. You live near Tunju Peak. Clap, clap, clap." Yin clapped his hands and laughed. "Master Ye's memory is really good. You actually know this little one's name. I'm afraid you didn't remove the roots back then and have been thinking about it all this time." Yi sneered. Removing the roots naturally means removing the roots. Moreover, Yi Feng violated the ancestral rules and should be executed. If you have any grievances, you can complain to the elders in the clan. However, look at you. You misinterpreted the ancestral rules and actually abandoned your principles to join the devil sect. You abandoned yourself and became Zhang Qingxiao's lackey. You're really pitiful and sad. When Yi heard this, a rare look of anger appeared on his face. He raised his hand and pointed at Yi, saying, "If we're talking about what happened back then, who knows better than you and me? Don't think that just because I was young back then, I didn't know anything. The evil deeds you've done are too numerous to be recorded. That night, if it wasn't for the fact that I'm of the Yi clan's bloodline and had nothing to do with that matter and secretly let me go, I'm afraid I would have died in your hands long ago." "Who was that person?" Yi smiled. Although he knew that Yi wouldn't say, he still asked. Yi took a deep breath and calmed himself down before continuing. "On that snowy night, I really hated myself for being surnamed Yi. Unfortunately, I was only a weak little doll and had no power to resist at all. If it wasn't for meeting my sect leader, I'm afraid I would have died on Tianzhu Peak. Is my sect leader someone hypocrites like you should know? In this world, there's no one who has the right to judge him. What Zhang Qingxiao is like has nothing to do with me," Yi said disdainfully. "However, since you're using Heavenly Devil Sect's name to seek revenge on me, then don't be afraid of stirring up a rift between the Sword Cultivators and Heavenly Devil Sect." Haha. Yin seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world as he pointed at Yi and laughed until he was convulsing with laughter, saying, "Yi, who do you think you are? If I wanted to kill you, I could have done so 100 years ago. However, because Heavenly Devil Sect is cooperating with the Sword Cultivators, I couldn't ruin Lord Sect Leader's plans, so I let you live until now. Actually, I can kill you as easily as squashing an ant. The Sword Cultivators' higher-ups definitely wouldn't know that I was the one who did it." Yi's reaction was also strange. He looked left and right and said, "Since you don't want to kill me, why did you attack me today? Based on your abilities, do you think you can kill me?" Yi shrugged his shoulders, looking extremely similar to Zhang Qingxiao. He said indifferently, "There's no other way. Sins committed by the heavens can be forgiven, but sins committed by men can't be spared. I can suppress my blood vengeance at the bottom of my heart, or I can look at you and pretend that I don't know you. I dare not disobey my sect leader's orders." At this point, Yin paused and looked at Sun Luo with a smile, saying, "Are you also very curious about my voice transmission earlier?" "Yes, I still don't understand." Sun Luo answered honestly. Yin raised his hand and saluted in a certain direction. Then he respectfully pointed at Li Zongbao and said, "Because my heavenly demonic sect master had already given a death order several hundred years ago. In this world, there are a few people that no one can touch. Whoever dares to touch them will be Heavenly Devil Sect's mortal enemy. Heavenly Devil sect will definitely not rest until they are dead. And this senior Li Zongbao before us is one of them. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Yi Yu couldn't help but roar. He was very clear about Heavenly Devil sect's abilities, but how could he know that this Li Zongbao, who abhorred evil, would have such a deep relationship with Heavenly Devil sect's sect leader? However, after a moment, Yi Yu smiled maliciously and said, "Since that's the case, Yin, don't blame me for being ruthless. If I kill all of you, even if Zhang Qingxiao's minions are all over the world, I'm afraid." Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, Yin raised his hand and took out a small flag. He said indifferently, "Yi Yu, do you recognize this flag?" Yi Yu's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and said, "Vice Sect Leader Yi, I don't recognize your Heavenly Devil Sect's flag. I don't know why you took it out." "Ah." Yi Yin laughed and said, "Since that's the case, I don't mind telling you that this flag is the command flag of Heavenly Devil Sect and Sword Cultivators. Anyone below the 3rd grade of Sword Transformation Realm who sees this flag is the same as seeing the Sword Master of Heavenly Devil Sect. Yi Yu, do you dare to disobey the command of Sword Cultivators?" Unexpectedly, Yi Yu shrugged and said innocently, "Vice Sect Leader Yi, I'm sorry. Although I'm a Sword Cultivator, I'm also the vassal of Mount Meng's Lucy Village. I can disobey the command of Sword Cultivators and Heavenly Devil Sect." "I see." Yin laughed. He was not surprised by Yi Yu's answer at all. He said, "It's really easy for a traitor to do such a thing. Since you've already abandoned Sword Cultivators and hugged the thighs of Soul Cultivators, there's no need for Sword Cultivators to take you seriously." As he spoke, Yin waved the command flag and said, "All of you, come out." Damn it. Seeing Yi Yin waving the command flag, Yi Yu knew that Yin still had some tricks up his sleeve. He said angrily, "I've never said that I'm not a sword cultivator. How can you take my words out of context?" Unfortunately, why would Yin care about him? As the small flag was waved, a series of sword cries came from the void. 2 swordsmen of 1st grade of Sword Transformation Realm and several experts of Heavenly Devil Sect revealed themselves. As soon as the 2 swordsmen appeared, they immediately cupped their hands and said, "Fellow swordsman Yi, I'm sorry. The command flag of Sword Cultivators is here. We have no choice but to obey the order." Seeing the 2 swordsmen and several experts of Heavenly Devil Sect surrounding them, Yi Yu panicked at first, but then he laughed and raised his hand to point at Yin. "Vice Sect Leader Yi, I didn't expect you to use public office to avenge private wrongs. I really feel sorry for Heavenly Devil Sect. What secret order of the sect leader? Li Zongbao is just a golden core disciple of the Utopia faction. How could he be protected by sect leader Zhang? If you said that you pretended to kill me, then that's the truth. Since you're so insistent, then don't blame me. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and thank you to Alliance Leader Mei Xianjun for your reward. Thank you to fellow cultivators Ferlin Loster and others for your support. I wrote until 12 o'clock yesterday, so I'll add a chapter first. Chapter 5065. Yin was shocked when he heard that. He looked around in confusion. He had used up all his trump cards, and he was hiding in the dark. He didn't notice and didn't think that Yi Yu still had other tricks up his sleeve. "Senior Lu." Yi Yu tidied up his sword attire and bowed respectfully to the sky. "Now that things have come to this, I have no choice but to ask you to show up." A cold snort came from the sky where Yi Yu bowed. With this cold snort, tens of millions of sword intents surged out of nowhere. Each sword intent condensed into a beautiful plum blossom in the air. The plum blossom not only covered the surrounding area of 100 miles, but also controlled all the cultivators under the sword intent. Under the illumination of the sword intent, a female swordsman with a cold expression appeared. Wasn't that Lu Ruochang from the Black Phoenix Sword Sect? Qin Nongshue's expression was calm. Yi Yu had already revealed to her that there would definitely be senior swordsmen helping at the crucial moment. Hence, even when she saw Sun Luo betray her and Yi Yin appear, she was not too alarmed. But now, when she saw LV Ruochang, she could not help but panic. He didn't have time to glare at Yu. He quickly bowed and said, "Disciple greets Grandmaster Lu." Lu Su's face was also pale. He bowed and said, "Disciple greets Grandmaster." The other sword cultivators didn't dare to neglect and bowed as well. As Qin Nongxue expected, Lu Rucheng didn't even look at him. Instead, her gaze fell on Yiyu's face. She narrowed her eyes and said, "Yiyu, you've hidden a lot of things from me." "Clan, what's going on? The flying dragon sword sex matter isn't as simple as I thought. I'm already regretting it now. I shouldn't have let you fight in the sword battle." "Senior, please no." Yiyu didn't panic at all. He bowed and said, "Senior, what you know is the truth. I didn't hide anything. As for the Yi clan's matter, it's between me and Yiyin. It's our Yi clan's matter. Senior, please don't take it to heart." "Well said." Lu Ruochang nodded. "If it's not my matter, then I won't care. Today, this sword has come to fulfill my promise to you. Tell me, what can this sword do to satisfy you?" LV Ruochang's appearance was too sudden, and Yiyin was caught unprepared. He looked at the command flag in his hand, and then at LV Ruochang. He understood that LV Ruochang had already stepped into the boundary of the third grade of the sword transformation realm, and had long surpassed the range of the command flag in his hand. He was unable to use the agreement between sword cultivators and the heavenly demon sect to restrict her. Of course, he was even more clear in his heart that before LV Ruochang reached the third grade of the sword transformation realm, the so-called agreement was only meant to be torn apart. "I'm afraid I'm doomed today. If I hurt Senior Li and my sect leader blames me, I'm afraid I won't be able to explain it." LV Ruochang snorted and said, "How you explain it has nothing to do with me. And I don't need to explain anything to Zhang Qingxiao. If he feels that I have offended him, he can come to the Black Phoenix Sword sect to find me. I'd like to see what kind of person Zhang Qingxiao is." With that, LV Ruochang raised his hand and grabbed. A large hand condensed from sword light appeared and grabbed down from the air. The large hand was hundreds of feet in size and immediately imprisoned the space where Li Zongbao and the others were. "Damn it." Yiyin cursed and didn't dare to be negligent. He knew that he was no match for LV Ruochang, but he still moved his body and activated his scroll-shaped magic weapon to meet the attack. Li Zongbao roared, "You're just a third-grade sword transformation swordsman. Come, 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 take my whip." With that, the shadow of the whip was like a mountain, meeting LV Ruochang's sword light hand. Boom! The sword light hand fell and crushed the shadow of the immortal slaying whip. Yi Yin's magic weapon was also hit until its brilliance was gone. LV Ruochang's surprised voice sounded, "Your cultivation method is a bit strange. No wonder Night Rain wants me to capture you." When Night Rain heard LV Ruochang expose his purpose, a trace of displeasure appeared on his face. Seeing that Li Zongbao was about to be captured by LV Ruochang's sword light hand, a voice as cold as ice but as loud as thunder sounded from the sky. "Whether Zhang Qingxiao has 3 heads and 6 arms or not, I don't know. But what this Xiao knows is that this Xiao and Zhang Qingxiao have the same thoughts. As long as I'm here, if anyone dares to touch a hair of senior brother Li Zongbao, I'll definitely take his life." LV Ruochang was stunned and an extremely bad feeling arose in his heart. He hurriedly looked up at the sky and growled, "Who dares to play tricks in front of me? You're just a third-grade sword transformation swordsman and you dare to be arrogant in front of me?" Following this voice, a fist several times bigger than the sword light hand appeared out of thin air and smashed towards LV Ruochang. Seeing that this fist had completed the condensation of thunder and an aura that could destroy heaven and earth rushed out from this fist, LV Ruochang turned pale with fright. She hurriedly wanted to urge the sword origin, but under the thunder, everything was destroyed. Not to mention the sword origin, even the sword light hand was annihilated in an instant. LV Ruochang's body was unable to move under the confinement of the fist, and a sense of powerlessness arose spontaneously from LV Ruochang's heart. The fist was extremely fast, comparable to a white horse galloping across the gap. Without waiting for the sound to land, it had already smashed into LV Ruochang's body with a boom. Woo! The sharp sound of the wind suddenly rose and LV Ruochang's body was ruthlessly smashed into the mountain peak, causing the entire mountain peak to shake violently. Everyone was stunned. Things had changed too quickly. In just a few words, LV Ruochang, who was comparable to the late nascent soul stage, was smashed into the mountain peak. Who could have such amazing strength? Who could it be? Everyone no longer cared about LV Ruochang, who was in the crack of the mountain peak, and turned to look at the origin of the Thunder Fist. They saw a thin and tall young cultivator wearing a Taoist robe flying over. On his face with slanted phoenix eyes, there was a faint smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. An indescribable aura filled the entire sky. Although the young cultivator's figure was normal, in everyone's eyes, it was as big as heaven and earth. Of course, this feeling was only for a moment. When everyone's eyes moved, all the feelings disappeared and they only saw a cultivator with an unknown cultivation level standing in front of them. Junior brother Xiao? Li Zongbao stuttered and called out. His mouth was dry and he didn't know what to say. Taoist Xiao. Yi was stunned at first and then said with ecstasy, "You are indeed in Million Mountain Meng." Xiao Hua. Yi naturally remembered something from her distant memory and her face instantly turned pale again. Guyu was also pleasantly surprised. She covered her small mouth with her hand and couldn't help but call out, "Senior? Senior Nameless." Everyone's expression was different. Xiaohua's gaze swept across everyone's face and landed on Li Zongbao's face. He looked again and said in a low voice, "Senior brother Li, you are old." Junior brother Xiao. Li Zongbao hesitated slightly, but when he heard Xiaohua still call him senior brother, his heart warmed and his nose turned sour. He simply didn't think too much and called him junior brother. "Don't blame me, it's your rejuvenation pill that doesn't work." P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5066. Ha! Xiaohua looked at the tears in Li Zongbao's eyes and patted his shoulder with a smile. "Don't worry, I'll give you a rejuvenation pill this time. I guarantee that you'll stay young forever." Li Zongbao lowered his head slightly and wiped away his tears. Without raising his head, he said, "It's good that you're back. I don't need any pills." "Yes, we'll talk about this later." Xiaohua didn't expose him and only nodded. "Wait for me to get rid of these people." Then, Xiaohua turned to look at Yi and said, "You're the deputy sect leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect." Reporting to Taoist Xiao. Facing Xiaohua, Yi was as respectful as facing Zhang Qingxiao. He hurriedly bowed and said, "I'm not the deputy sect leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect. I'm only the deputy sect leader of the Tianfan sect." Speaking of this, Yin lowered his voice and said, "My name is Yin. Previously, I remember." Xiaohua also patted Yi Yin's shoulder and said, "You're that kid from the Tianzhu Peak. Later, I even saw you. This old man saw everything that happened just now. You did very well." Hearing that Xiaohua still remembered him and even patted his shoulder and praised him, Yin was really happy. He hurriedly replied, "I dare not forget Taoist Zhao's saving grace. I would never dare to forget Lord Sect Master's teachings." "How did your sect leader teach you?" Xiaohua was slightly stunned and asked curiously. Cultivating the devil is also cultivating the human. If you can't even be a human, you're not qualified to cultivate the devil. Yi Yin replied respectfully. You're right." Xiaohua chuckled and raised his head to look at Yi Yu and the others. Yi Yu was already panicking. However, facing Xiaohua, he didn't dare to act rashly. He was definitely not a match for a cultivator who could easily injure LV Ruochang. He could only wait and see. Seeing Yi Yu's reaction, Qin Nongxue and Lu Su were even more panicked. Their eyes turned rapidly as they prepared to deal with it. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could open his mouth, there was a walala sound. Lu Ruochang actually flew out from the mountain rock again. Although LV Ruochang's sword equipment was damaged and the sword light around her was messy, there were still some traces of blood at the corner of her mouth. It was obvious that Xiao Hua was merciful and didn't really want to kill LV Ruocheng. Lu Ruocheng flew up and landed in front of Xiao Hua. She looked at Xiao Hua with a complicated gaze. She felt wronged and unconvinced, but in the end she still bowed and said, "Junior greets Daoist Xiao." Although several hundred years had passed since the Sword Dao Great War, the influence of that Sword Dao Great War was truly great. The cultivation structure of Daybreak Continent had undergone a fundamental change because of that war. This change was not only because the sword cultivators of the Huan Kingdom occupied the Sentry City, but also because of the rise of the Heavenly Devil sect. Although the Heavenly Devil sect only existed for a few hundred years, it created a buffer between sword cultivators and Taoist cultivators. Therefore, the current Xiaoyu continent could be said to be a tripartite balance of power between sword cultivators, and the Heavenly Devil sect. LV Ruocheng led the sword cultivators in the war. Although the sword cultivators won the final victory, there were too many secrets. The secret of Nameless and Horrible Phoenix was probably the most dazzling mystery among them. This secret was naturally not easy to analyze at that time. No one would associate it with Xiao Hua, who was only in the Foundation establishment realm. However, time was the primer to uncover all the mysteries. After Xiao Hua returned to the Xiaoyu continent for hundreds of years, all the secrets were revealed after Xiao Hua was expelled from the Thunder-controlling sect. When the Thunder-controlling sect became a topic of ridicule for sword cultivators in the Three Kingdoms, LV Ruocheng also carefully studied and pondered over the whole process of the sword cultivators' formation. She knew most of Xiao Hua's whereabouts and secrets. In the end, LV Ruocheng was shocked to find out that his biggest opponent in the war was actually Xiao Hua, the Foundation establishment realm cultivator who was hiding behind the scenes. After the end of the first stage of the Sword Dao War, in order to ensure the success of the second stage, the sword cultivators even sent a few second-grade sword transformation realm cultivators to ambush Xiao Hua and the others along with LV Ruocheng at the edge of Millions Mountains, which was the left side of Drifting Cloud Lake. On that day, LV Ruocheng witnessed the power of the Soul Falling Lamp. After paying the price of a few second-grade sword transformation realm swordsmen, he had to return in defeat again. However, a few hundred years later, in almost the same place, with almost the same people, LV Ruocheng met Xiao Hua again. This time, there was no Soul Falling Lamp, no Elder Wu from Huda's Decade, no second-grade sword transformation realm cultivator, only LV Ruocheng who had just stepped into the third-grade sword transformation realm, and only Xiao Hua's vast magical power. Night Rain couldn't see through Xiao Hua's strength, and LV Ruocheng also couldn't see through Xiao Hua's strength. But LV Ruocheng knew that when he faced Xiao Hua's punch, he was like a baby boy. With the strength of a third-grade sword transformation realm cultivator, he didn't have any ability to resist. Xiao Hua was definitely a Dao sect divine transformation realm cultivator. He had the strength to kill him with a flick of his finger. Since Xiao Hua didn't kill him, it meant that he was merciful. Could it be that Senior didn't kill my sword cultivator disciples? Moreover, this junior set up the soul array under Senior LV's orders. This junior was just following orders. LV Ruocheng's expression didn't change. She glanced at Night Rain indifferently. In her heart, she really despised this despicable person's actions. However, she didn't have any right to defend herself and could only listen to Xiao Hua's judgment. Fortunately, Xiao Hua glanced at Li Zongbao and said with a smile, "Senior brother Li, it has been more than 600 years since the sword battle, right?" "Yes." Li Zongbao didn't remember how many years had passed, but he still nodded and said, "More or less. Since it has already passed, then let it pass." Xiao Hua said, "There are many things that happen in this world every day. Some are right, some are wrong, and there are even some that we can't say is right or wrong. We should set our sights further." Li Zongbao naturally didn't have Xiao Hua's current vision. Although he didn't understand why Xiao Hua let Night Rain go, since Xiao Hua had spoken, he had no reason to refute. He glared at Night Rain and didn't say anything else. "Thank you for sparing my life, Senior. Thank you for sparing my life." Night Rain was overjoyed and quickly kowtowed to express his gratitude. However, Xiaohua's next words made him fall into an ice cellar again. Night Rain, you shouldn't thank this old man. The sword battle involves sword cultivators and Taoism. This old man can't say anything about it. Similarly, the grudge between Yi clan is a personal grudge between you and Yi Yin. This old man can't interfere, damn it. When Night Rain heard this, he immediately understood. He cursed in his heart and immediately moved, turning into a black shadow and heading towards the direction of the millions of Meng Mountains. Yi Yin was even more powerful than Yi Yu. He had already realized what was going on the moment Xiaohua uttered his first two sentences. His hand was already gripping the command flag. He waited for Yi Yu to move before he waved the command flag and commanded, "Disciples of the Heavenly Demon Sect, listen up. Surround and eliminate the Soul Cultivator spy." "Yes, sir." When the two experts of Heavenly Demon Sect received the order, they moved and attacked Night Rain together with Yin. Grandmaster Lu, Grandmaster Lu. Seeing Night Rain fleeing, Qi Nongxue and Lu Su knelt down in front of Lu Ruochang and begged, "We are sorry." P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Once again, I would like to thank Lord Mei Xianjun and everyone's support. I am writing with all my might. Chapter 5067. Lu Ruochang's face was as cold as frost. He snorted and said, "I can clearly see your ugliness. Not only did you covet other people's spiritual weapons, but you also faked the Sword Master's token. How can such a crime be forgiven? Why don't you commit suicide? Don't dirty my hands, tarnish the reputation of the Void Heaven Sword School, and ruin the reputation of sword cultivators." Clang! Before LV Ruochang finished his words, Qin Nongxue and Lu Su's bodies immediately glowed with sword light. They rushed in two different directions. How could such scum commit suicide? Ah! Xiaohua patted Li Zongbao's shoulder with a smile and said, "In this case, senior brother Li, why don't you send them off on behalf of Lu Jianyu?" When Li Zongbao felt Xiaohua's palm land on his shoulder, he immediately felt a wave of vital essence that was as faint as smoke, but also as vigorous as the waves of the sea. This vital essence rushed into his meridians, majestically flowing towards his arm that held the Kill Immortal Whip. "Good." Li Zongbao glared and shouted, "Where are you going? Take my whip." Li Zongbao roared angrily. The celestial slaying whip in his hands suddenly shone brightly. As Li Zongbao waved it, two whip shadows turned into the shape of horned dragons. They broke through the air and fell directly towards Qi Nongxue and Lu Su. Pa! Two sounds came from two different places at the same time. Under the Kill Immortal Whip, the sword origin in Qi Nongxue's body was completely imprisoned. She couldn't activate her sword essence at all. A first-grade sword transformation realm swordsman, equivalent to an early-stage nascent soul realm master, was killed by Li Zongbao just like that. Even her primordial spirit didn't escape. Qi Nongxue was killed, let alone Lu Su. When Li Zongbao put away the Kill Immortal Whip, the corpses of the two people were still slowly falling from the sky to the cliff. At this time, Yin also came back with Yi Yu in his hand. He said respectfully, "Senior, Yi Yu said that he has a secret about Xiao Mao to tell you. He also said that it involves the Yi family. Except for him, no one else knows about it, so I don't dare to make a decision. Senior, please punish me." "The Yi family?" Xiaohua sneered and glanced at Yi Yu. "Yi Yu, you think too highly of yourself. Is there no one else in the entire Yi clan apart from you?" As he spoke, Xiaohua raised his hand and took out the keepsake given to him by the Yi clan's ancestor, Yi Zhen. "Take a look at what this is." "Ah?" When Yi Yin saw the token, he couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Yi Yu was restrained by Yi Yin and naturally couldn't speak. However, her face was filled with disbelief. Xiaohua took the token and said, "If this old man wants to know Xiao Mao's secret, do I still need to ask you? Using other people's secrets in exchange for your own life. Night Rain, you've miscalculated." "Yes, this junior understands." Yi Yin became even more respectful toward Xiaohua. As he spoke, he picked up Yi Yu and left. After a short while, Yin returned with Yiyu's soul nest in his hand. He asked Xiao Hua for instructions. Senior, this is Yiyu's item. If Senior doesn't need it, I'll ask my disciples to return it to Mianshan. Yes, send him back. Xiao Hua was very satisfied with Yi Yin's handling. He smiled and said, just say that I want to kill Yiyu. Elder Wu and Ji-man of Shi-Bai village won't dare to say anything. Yin didn't hesitate. He immediately ordered several disciples of Heavenly Demon Sect to take the soul nest and Yiyu's corpse to Shi-Bai village while he still stood respectfully at the side. Okay. Xiao Hua glanced at LV Ruochang and several sword practitioners of Huan Kingdom and said, this matter is over. You all can go back. However, I hope that you all can keep my appearance a secret for the time being. Yes, this junior understands. LV Ruochang and Sun Luo didn't dare to neglect. They bowed and flew away. LV Ruochang didn't even care about the corpses of Qin Nongxue and Lu Su. He was really afraid of dirtying his hands. After the sword practitioners flew away, Yin was a little puzzled. He asked respectfully, Senior, the reason why this junior was sent to Huan Kingdom by Master is that, on the one hand, I want to build a good relationship with the sword practitioners of Huan Kingdom. On the other hand, I'm also under Master's secret order to find your trace near Mianshan. Now that you're back, can't I send a message to Master? How did Zhang Qingxiao know that I'm in Mianshan? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Yin smiled and said, this junior doesn't know. However, what this junior knows is that more than 600 years ago, Senior was expelled from Imperial Thunder Sect and then disappeared from Xiaoyu continent. No one knows whether you're dead or alive. When Master received the news, he immediately put aside all the sect's affairs and personally led us to follow the path that Thunder Meng Immortal took to find Senior. Wait! Xiao Hua was touched, but he frowned again. He raised his hand and said, Thunder Meng Immortal was chasing after me? What's going on? Tell me in detail. Yes. Yin did not dare to be negligent and told him everything he knew about Heavenly Demon Sect. In the end, he said, my Lord Sect Master followed Thunder Meng Reverend's flight path all the way to QC. He even sent us to search for you in the vicinity for several months, but we couldn't find any trace of you. Just when we thought that Senior had fallen, Lord Sect Master suddenly thought of something and brought us back to Shi country. After that, Lord Sect Master went to another place, and when he came back, he sent his trusted disciples to explore different places. Coincidentally, this junior was in charge of the border of Huan country and Million Mountains. According to the Sect Master, Senior Li had come to the mysterious Million Meng Mountains with Senior Li, and after Senior Li returned from the Million Meng Mountains, he blocked the Imperial Thunder Sect for 10 days and 10 nights. He felt that Senior Li might escape into the Million Meng Mountains. Blocked Imperial Thunder Sect for 10 days and 10 nights. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Li Zongbao and said with a smile, Senior Brother Li, you're quite capable. Aren't you afraid of being punished by Utopia faction? You're the biggest contributor to the Sword Dao battle. Li Zongbao smiled faintly. Imperial Thunder Sect treated you like this? I'm not convinced. Senior Li was almost expelled from Utopia faction. Yin hurriedly said, he was punished to practice in seclusion for 10 years. When Master heard about this, he immediately issued a death order. Whoever dares to touch Senior Li, Heavenly Demon Sect will fight them to the death. Not even Utopia faction. Damn that Zhang Qingxiao. Xiao Hua's eyes were a little moist, and he whispered, I wanted to see how Heavenly Demon Sect is doing now, but he's making things difficult for me with his loyalty. Yin immediately understood Xiao Hua's meaning and hurriedly said with a smile, Senior, don't worry. I don't understand other people, but I know my master best. He can definitely pass your test. Alas, I'm not testing your master. Xiao Hua smiled. I want to see how Heavenly Demon Sect is doing. I can't guarantee this. Yin didn't hide it and said with a smile, after all, Heavenly Demon Sect is developing too fast, and it's inevitable that good and bad people are mixed. But my master also racked his brains to restrain these disciples. His strength and energy are always limited. Xiao Hua understood and nodded. And among the disciples who joined Heavenly Demon Sect, There are very few disciples like you, so it's inevitable that he'll make some mistakes. Yes, you're right, Senior. Yi nodded. However, this doesn't affect the fact that Heavenly Demon Sect has become the third most powerful force in Xiaoyu continent. That was in the past. Xiaohua looked at the misty sky and said, soon, an even bigger force will be born on Xiaoyu continent, and I have to consider the relationship between this force and Heavenly Demon Sect. Senior is talking about the Fortune Gate, right? Yi realized and hurriedly answered, although the Fortune Gate has some reputation, it's still not big enough. Alright, let's not talk about this. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand, saying, I really want to know, with your master's ability, how did he know? Speaking up to here, Xiaohua suddenly slapped his forehead and said with a smile, I forgot. Since Senior Sister has Lu Er's life spirit tablet, he can naturally find out from Senior Sister that this old man is alive and well in this world. There are only two things. Oh? Two things? What two things? Xiaohua knew that Li Zongbao didn't like to talk too much. So, seeing an opportunity, he hurriedly asked. Cultivating and finding a way to resurrect Zhuoxia. Li Zongbao hurriedly ate the spirit fruit and stood up. Now that you're back, I'm relieved. Let Yi send Guyu back to the Void Heaven Sword School. I'll return to Mount Meng. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed. Without waiting for Li Zongbao to finish, he raised his hand and said, Senior brother Li, sit down first. We haven't seen each other for hundreds of years. Can't you accompany this little brother and chat for a while? All right. Li Zongbao hesitated for a moment and sat down. But he looked at the spirit wine in front of him and said, But I won't drink this spirit wine. Xiaohua sighed in his heart and asked, Guyu is actually pretty good. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could finish, Li Zongbao stood up and said, Since you're telling me this, I don't think I need to waste my time here. Whether Guyu is good or bad, I know better than you, Senior brother Li. Do you feel that your lifespan is approaching and you don't dare to delay her? Xiaohua asked, hitting the nail on the head. The corner of Li Zongbao's mouth twitched a few times, but he didn't answer immediately. What if you don't count your lifespan? Xiaohua asked again. At this moment, Li Zongbao shook his head without hesitation. But he still didn't speak. Xiaohua really admired Li Zongbao's loyalty. He couldn't imagine that Li Zongbao's sincerity towards Kai Zhuoxia was actually supporting Li Zongbao in the millions of Meng Mountains for hundreds of years. He also didn't dare to imagine that the beautiful Guyu was accompanying Li Zongbao by his side, yet Li Zongbao wasn't the slightest bit moved. People really can't be compared. Xiaohua sighed with emotion. Let's not talk about this anymore. Xiaohua seemed to be afraid of provoking Li Zongbao's displeasure, so he smiled and said, Let's talk about cultivation. Your current cultivation is very strange. It's very different from my Xiaoyu continent's cultivation. Li Zongbao nodded and said concisely, Do you still remember the jade slip you gave me that year? I took that jade slip, and according to the records inside, I went to the millions of Meng Mountains and found a strange Taoist inheritance. This inheritance only cultivated gold core, not nascent soul. I saw that I had no hope of conceiving a nascent soul, so I tried to cultivate. Just like that? Xiaohua was dumbstruck. Xiaohua was dumbstruck, not because of Li Zongbao's unique opportunity, but because of Li Zongbao's concise narration. Li Zongbao only replied with one word. Alas. Xiaohua sighed and said, Senior apprentice brother Li, this is all my fault. Back then, you were known as the number one person below gold core, and your name resounded throughout the cultivation world. But in the end, you couldn't even conceive a nascent soul, and it was all because of the spirit tool I refined for you. I don't blame you. Li Zongbao smiled and said, If it weren't for you, how could I see the various states of the world? How could I see the ugliness of human nature? Xiaohua nodded and said, That's true. If Senior apprentice brother had always been high and mighty, how could you see the filthiness of others? Now that you can't conceive a nascent soul for a long time, I'm afraid that there have already been some rumors, and some people have already used these to slander your contributions in the Sword Dao War. If it weren't for the fact that you can't conceive a nascent soul, I'm afraid that you wouldn't be able to hear these and see these things. These are all fleeting clouds. Li Zongbao sighed with emotion and said, I just feel that it's a pity that I couldn't find a way to resurrect Shuoxia after traveling all over the millions of Meng mountains. The previous promise can't be fulfilled in this life. Senior apprentice brother has accompanied Kai Shuoxia for hundreds of years, never leaving her side. I've already fulfilled the promise of holding her hand. It's just that I'm missing the so-called flower in front of the moon. Xiaohua said and raised his cup. For Kai Shuoxia's resurrection, for senior apprentice brother's hard work, I propose a toast to senior apprentice brother. Li Zongbao helplessly picked up the wine cup and said, Senior apprentice brother, don't mention it again in the future. Your cultivation far surpasses mine, and I'm afraid it's not appropriate for others to hear it. Hee hee. Xiaohua raised his cup and drank, and said with a smile, Senior apprentice brother is wrong. Have you forgotten the relationship between Kai Shuoxia and Fairy Hongxia? If I don't call you senior apprentice brother, what should I call you? Hee hee. Li Zongbao drank happily and said with a smile, If that's the case, even if you cultivate to the combination realm, you have to call me senior apprentice brother. That's right. Xiaohua nodded. This is family, it can't be compared to other things. Li Zongbao nodded. I hope I can see the day when you cultivate to the combination realm. Ha! Xiaohua laughed. I'm afraid senior apprentice brother won't be able to see that day. Hee hee, that's true. Li Zongbao also smiled. You're right, I don't have many more days to live. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in such a hurry to go to the millions of Meng mountains. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Thank you to the leader of Dancing in Phosphorescence. Thank you to Folding Flowers and Sweeping to the Dust. Starry Sky reappears 8. No More Flowers, and other fellow Taoists. Chapter 5069. However, I will have the opportunity to see the day when senior brother Li cultivates to the unity stage. Xiaohua knew that Li Zongbao had misunderstood and said with a smile. Li Zongbao was stunned, then he smiled and said, I don't cultivate nascent soul anymore, how can I reach the unity stage? Oh, it seems that I was wrong. Xiaohua raised his cup and said, It should be the day when senior brother cultivates to the 5th transformation golden core. Li Zongbao was shocked and asked, You? How do you know that I'm cultivating 9th transformation golden core? Xiaohua let out a long sigh, as if he wanted to spit out the depression in his heart. He said, Senior martial brother Li, your love for Kai Shuoxia is truly moving. That's why the heavens borrowed this little brother's hand to reward senior martial brother Li. Of course, it was also because I was rash all those years ago and refined an incomplete spirit artifact that caused senior brother Li's lifespan to be shortened and his cultivation to be damaged. This is why I have to apologize to senior brother Li. With that, Xiaohua took out the 9th transformation golden core cultivation method and handed it to Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao looked at it puzzledly and didn't take it. He asked curiously, What is this? Look at the jade slip first. Xiaohua knew that Li Zongbao was cautious, so he handed the jade slip to Li Zongbao first. Li Zongbao released his divine sense and looked at it for a moment. His face naturally showed joy and surprise, and he said, This is the complete 9th transformation golden core cultivation method? It seems different from what I got. Senior brother, let me see the cultivation method you got. Xiaohua didn't explain much. He still had an 8th transformation golden core in his space, but he didn't know how to use it. Since Li Zongbao got the 9th transformation golden core cultivation method, it meant that a cultivator fell in Meng Mountains before the decline of Xian Alliance. Maybe there was a way to use the 8th transformation golden core in this cultivation method. Sure enough, after Xiaohua took the cultivation method from Li Zongbao and looked at it, Xiaohua's heart was at ease. He smiled and said, Senior brother Li, have you seen the secret technique of using the golden core? Li Zongbao nodded and said, I have seen it a long time ago, but I don't believe that there is such a magical secret technique in the world. Isn't this more powerful than my Tao cultivator's condensed treasure? This is nothing. Xiaohua smiled and said, the Dawn Rain continent is merely a lost land, a place forgotten by the Dao sect. On the other side of the Million Meng Mountains, there's a Dao sect alliance so powerful that even the demon race is afraid of it. Defeat the Immortal Alliance. Li Zongbao said very naturally. Xiaohua had no choice but to answer patiently. Li Yu Immortal Alliance is only one of the 72 immortal alliances of the Heaven Alliance, and the Dao Alliance that stands side by side with the Heaven Alliance has 81 immortal alliances. The continent where the Heaven Alliance and the Dao Alliance were located was called the Yi Lin continent. The Dawn Rain continent is but a corner of the Yi Lin continent. So many. Li Zongbao was a little dumbfounded. On the other side of the Guihe Sea. Xiaohua then points to the east and says, outside an enormous immortal formation that can isolate the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, there are 3 continents that are the same size as the Yilin continent. They are called the Hidden Immortal Continent, the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, and the Pure Land. On these 3 continents, there are Confucian cultivators, demons, and Buddhist sects that are as powerful as the Taoist sects. Li Zongbao's eyes lit up and he cried out, so, this world is so big. Then, there must be a secret technique to revive Zhuoxia there. I don't know if there is. Xiaohua looked at Li Zongbao and encouraged, this will depend on Senior Brother Li to find it yourself. However, Senior Brother Li's current strength is still not enough. Junior Brother will help Senior Brother Li. With that, Xiaohua took out the golden core that Yang Xia gave him. Because Xiaohua had just mentioned the method to use the golden core, when Li Zongbao saw this golden core, his eyelids unconsciously jumped, and he said in shock, Junior Brother, this is the so-called golden core? That's right. Xiaohua thought for a bit and nodded. This is a 5th transformation golden core. This was not out of Xiaohua's expectations. After Li Zongbao heard this, he was shocked and cried out in shock. 5th transformation? Then, isn't that equivalent to the spirit-severing stage cultivator of my Dao cultivation? Seeing Li Zongbao so shocked, Xiaohua knew that he was right not to tell him about the 8th transformation golden core. He smiled and said, that's right, it is the strength of a spirit-severing stage cultivator. If Senior Brother uses this golden core, you can go find the secret technique to revive Kai Zhuoxia. I understand what you mean. Li Zongbao's eyes were filled with hope. He looked at the golden core and said with some regret, however, since this golden core was left by a 5th transformation senior, then relying on my ability alone, I'm afraid it's not easy to fuse with it. Is Junior Brother's strength enough now? Xiaohua laughed and said, if Junior Brother can't help Senior Brother, why would Junior Brother take it out? Alright. Li Zongbao nodded and said, I'll have to trouble Junior Brother. But Xiaohua did not immediately take action. Instead, he looked at Li Zongbao and said, Senior Brother, your jade slip only records how to fuse with the golden core and how to cultivate, but in fact, this secret technique is still very different from condensing treasure, and also has a huge flaw. Tell me. Li Zongbao replied, I also know that there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Condensing treasure is the condensation of the person's cultivation experience, and only the person can use it. Xiaohua explained, for cultivators, it is not particularly harmful. But this golden core is different, it is the crystallization of other people's cultivation. Although the secret technique has already dealt with it, the Dao sect's methods cannot remove things that do not belong to the Dao sect's cultivation. In the simplest way, this golden core must have a demonic barrier, which is the traces of the heavenly demon's invasion when the owner of the golden core broke through the bottleneck. This demonic barrier is definitely different from the test when Senior Brother broke through the bottleneck, so Senior Brother fused with the golden core, and during the breakthrough, you will be attacked by 2 heavenly demons. I understand. Li Zongbao nodded. This is nothing. Indeed. Xiaohua said with a smile, for Senior Brother, who has a noble character, is devoted to love, and has a tenacious heart, this test is nothing. But Junior Brother still wants to remind Senior Brother that there may be more things than you and I expect, so Senior Brother must be more careful than others. Understood. Li Zongbao confirmed again. In that case, Senior brother can comprehend the fusion secret technique. After Xiao Hua finished speaking, he raised his hand and said, Senior brother, give junior brother the kill immortal whip first, and junior brother will take advantage of this time to help you refine it again. Li Zongbao handed the kill immortal whip to Xiao Hua without thinking, and he immersed his divine sense into the jade slip and began to comprehend. As a former genius cultivator, Li Zongbao's aptitude was naturally more outstanding than Xiao Hua's. It didn't take long for him to finish comprehending. Even Xiao Hua was surprised by the speed. After Xiao Hua asked a few questions, he was relieved and knew that Li Zongbao was indeed a genius. Senior brother Li. After Xiao Hua asked, he sighed with emotion, your aptitude is really the best I have seen in my life. Unfortunately, you were born in the wrong place, in the lost land of the Xiaoyu continent. If you were lucky and were born in the Yilin continent, I'm afraid you would already be a cultivator of the late nascent soul stage. Speaking of this, Xiao Hua was a little embarrassed. Although he respected Li Zongbao when talking about cultivation, he couldn't help but habitually say it like a disciple, so he hurriedly added, of course, if there are some opportunities beyond ordinary cultivators, it's normal to cultivate to the middle stage of the spirit severing stage. Li Zongbao didn't care, and said with a smile, if others say so, I may be proud, but you are the terrifying phoenix of the sword battle, and you are the #1 person under the nascent soul stage. If you say so, where can I put my face? Seeing that Li Zongbao spoke a little more, Xiao Hua was also very happy and said, that's all in the past. The test of the heavenly Tao for senior brother Li has been completed. From today onwards, senior brother Li's happy days are here, thanks to you, thank you. Li Zongbao said, sitting cross-legged, as if he was cultivating normally. When Li Zongbao operated the secret technique, Xiao Hua didn't dare to neglect. He raised his hand and took the jindan in his left hand. After half a cup of tea's time, a black spot the size of a sesame seed appeared in Li Zongbao's lower dantian. A whistling sound came from this black spot, and the spirit chi of heaven and earth in the surrounding dozens of feet turned into a small hurricane and fell into this black spot. Seeing this, Xiao Hua hurriedly rubbed his hands. Kacha! Several crystal lights turned into thin threads of lightning and fell in the space, instantly confining 100 miles, and not a trace of spirit chi of heaven and earth could enter. Since the restriction was formed, the black spot in Li Zongbao's lower dantian could no longer absorb any spirit chi of heaven and earth. Therefore, this black spot gradually increased in size, and in the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the black spot became the size of a thumb. This black spot formed a vortex, and a layer of pitch black overlapped with a layer of gray. Layers of obscure fluctuations gradually became crazy in this mixture of pitch black and white, and somewhat disorderly overflowed in all directions. Xiao Hua understood that this was the first difficulty of fusing with the jindan. If it wasn't for a solid foundation, if it wasn't for a forbearing Tao heart, it would be difficult to control the sudden surge of spiritual power, causing the original jindan to explode. However, Xiao Hua wasn't worried at all. Li Zongbao's experience was much more bumpy than other people's. He had experienced the ups and downs of life, and he was also devoted to love and didn't admire prosperity. Therefore, this initial difficulty was merely a baptism. Sure enough, after the vortex expanded to the size of a fist, it crazily expanded again, and then slowly shrunk, gradually returning to the size of a fist. The pitch black and gray layers overlapped with each other, as if they were engraved with the passage of time. They were abnormally clear, and the fluctuations emitted by each layer of growth rings were different. When these fluctuations fell into the air, they actually formed an uneven rhythm. Seeing that the vortex was solidifying like a marble, Xiao Hua waved his left hand and threw out the jindan, which fell into the center of the fluctuations. Those uneven fluctuations rushed into the jindan. Boom! A light sound, like a bonfire being lit, rang out, and a human figure rushed out from the jindan. This human figure's appearance wasn't very clear, but the aura of an 8th grade elemental energy was so condensed that it was almost solid. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support it, cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, collect a collection, gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-70. Xiaohua opened his mouth and spat out a cluster of Buddha fire, which fell on top of the human-shaped shadow. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes as he looked at the illusory image above the gold core. He was clear in his heart that this illusory image was the will left behind by the owner of the gold core. When his Buddha fire fell, it would certainly be like burning the Buddhist sect's Saraira. It would exterminate many of the will and karma, which would be of great benefit to Li Zongbao in condensing a new gold core. But at the same time, if Li Zongbao did not go through the process of subduing the remnant will of the golden core, it would certainly leave behind a great hidden danger in his future cultivation. Xiaohua hesitated for a moment. The ring-shaped Buddha fire did not fall, and the golden core's shadow urged the golden core to resist the suction force of the whirlpool. Although the shadow urged the golden core instinctively, the resistance was obvious. The golden core was like a boulder in the wind, standing upright in the air without moving. Xiaohua waited for an hour. The suction force was still the same, like a gale. The golden core was still the golden core, and the shadow did not even dim a bit. Thus, Xiaohua simply sat cross-legged in the distance. He opened his mouth and spat out Buddha fire, helping Li Zongbao refine the immortal slaughtering whip. After a full 10 days, the golden core's shadow began to thin, and strands of light fell into the whirlpool. The rock-solid golden core began to show signs of loosening. After another 10 days, the shadow was pulled into a shape of cotton. Following the distortion of the shadow, the outer layer of the golden core was also pulled, and the golden core began to move toward the whirlpool. However, this movement was quite slow. In 2 hours, it would only move a few inches. Xiaohua was not in a hurry. This was the second difficulty of fusing with the golden core. With Li Zongbao's current cultivation, fusing with the 8 revolutions golden core was tantamount to an ant trying to shake a tree. He could only chew this hard bone bit by bit. After a full month, Li Zongbao finally pulled the massive golden core into the whirlpool. At this time, the golden core was no longer in the shape of a golden core, but more like a drop of water. The oval-shaped golden core fell outside the whirlpool, and the other golden cores had already turned into liquid pills that were pulled into the whirlpool. Moreover, under the suction force of the whirlpool, not only were these liquid pills stretched out intermittently, but they were also torn into small and large particles. As the vortex rotated, fine lines appeared on the surface of the golden core. The runes on the golden core were torn apart and the ripples were sucked into the vortex. Good. Seeing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but secretly praise in his heart, Li Zongbao really lives up to his reputation. It's very important for him to fuse with the golden core. After passing the demonic tribulation, Li Zongbao's fusion with the golden core would be smooth sailing. Xiaohua didn't pay any more attention to him. He only stayed a few dozen li away from Li Zongbao, and finally refined the kill immortal whip. It was another dusk. The dim yellow sunlight with remnants of red shone on Li Zongbao's body. All the previous lights and shadows had already been withdrawn into his body. The complicated fluctuations also began to gradually become orderly, and finally merged into one fluctuation. Shua! An inexplicable golden light bloomed from Li Zongbao's body, like a blooming epiphyllum, flashed and disappeared, falling into the void. Li Zongbao slowly opened his eyes. His gaze fell on the back of Xiaohua, who was standing not far away with his hands in his sleeves, as if he was looking at the sunset. A complicated expression appeared in his eyes. Previously, he might not know what Xiaohua's cultivation realm was, and even now, he still didn't know. However, from the boundless magical power in his body and the golden core that was like a mountain peak and an ocean, Li Zongbao could already roughly estimate Xiaohua's strength. Junior, Brother Xiao. Li Zongbao hesitated for a moment before opening his mouth again. However, he only said one sentence and didn't know how to continue. Should he thank him? Not to mention a few words of thanks, even if he said 1,000 words, it wouldn't be comparable to Xiaohua's help to him, right? But if he didn't thank him, how could he express the gratitude in his heart? Senior Brother Li. Xiaohua didn't turn his head and only said, "Come and look at this sunset. This kind of sunset is so beautiful, It always gives me the feeling of, the sunset is infinitely beautiful, just like dusk. It makes me feel that time is rushing. No matter how strong you are, you can't keep the beauty of this world. Alas, yes. Li Zongbao rarely raised his eyes to appreciate the sunset. He looked at the afterglow of the setting sun and sighed with emotion. I haven't seen such a beautiful scenery for hundreds of years. Every time I see this sunset, I only feel that time is like lightning. I didn't do anything at all in this time. Nonsense. Xiaohua suddenly changed the topic. You don't have to appreciate it yourself, because it's boring for you to look at it alone. Li Zongbao was stunned, not understanding why Xiaohua said this. Xiaohua turned his head, looked at Li Zongbao and said with a smile, Senior brother Li, although you're still in the second stage of Jindan and your strength hasn't changed much, from now on, your cultivation won't have any bumps. Your cultivation speed will also be several times faster than ordinary cultivators. You have plenty of time to appreciate such beautiful scenery. Of course, you're too lonely by yourself, so you might as well find a beauty to accompany you. Saying this, Xiaohua waved his hand and threw the refined Kill Immortal Whip to Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao took the Kill Immortal Whip, activated his magical power and put it away. Then he looked at Xiaohua indifferently and said, Don't talk nonsense, there's nothing between me and Guyu. Hee hee. Xiaohua shrugged and said, Little brother didn't say anything about Guyu? Since little brother mentioned it, you mentioned Guyu, presumably in your heart, you also? Unfortunately, when he saw Li Zongbao's unhappy expression, Xiaohua didn't dare to say more. He stopped and said, You have Kai Zhuoxia's corpse with you, right? Of course. Li Zongbao's somewhat excited mood immediately calmed down, and a faint sadness involuntarily appeared in his eyes. He said, I can't leave her alone outside. Xiaohua nodded and said, Take it out and let me see. But although Li Zongbao was surprised that Xiaohua suddenly mentioned Kai Zhuoxia, he still took out the crystal coffin from his storage bag. The crystal coffin floated in midair, and Kai Zhuoxia was quietly lying inside. Her eyebrows were slightly knitted, and it was so lifelike. Her expression was somewhat similar to Fairy Hongxia's, causing Xiaohua to involuntarily think of Fairy Hongxia. Although Xiaohua had already returned to the Xiaoyu continent, he seemed to have suddenly lost his courage and didn't dare to see Fairy Hongxia. The setting sun just happened to sprinkle a ray of afterglow on the crystal coffin, and that blood-red light and shadow passed through the crystal and landed on Kai Zhuoxia's face. It was like a layer of red, causing Li Zongbao to be somewhat infatuated. Senior brother Li. Xiaohua withdrew his gaze and looked at Li Zongbao's appearance and said with a bitter smile, Little brother really doesn't understand. You don't need to understand. You have your love, and I also have my longing. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Li Zongbao's eyes didn't even move as he said, Every time those longings are born, I will be satisfied for the rest of my life. AI. Infatuated Li Zongbao. Xiaohua lamented, This Xiao can't compare to you. In this world, I'm afraid there are not many people who can compare to you. This is what I owe Zhuoxia, and it has nothing to do with being infatuated. Li Zongbao said indifferently. Xiaohua smiled and said, Since that's the case, you have already repaid what you owe Kai Zhuoxia. For the rest of your life, it's time for her to repay you. I hope so. Li Zongbao replied casually, but when he said this, he was suddenly startled, as if he had a premonition. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Xiaohua, only to be met with Xiaohua's evil smile. Li Zongbao seemed to have understood something and stuttered, Junior brother Xiao, what did you say? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe, give a monthly vote, a recommendation vote, a collection, a tip, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 5071. Xiaohua said word by word, I said, From today onwards, it's time for Kai Zhuoxia to return your company. She has to accompany you to watch such a beautiful sunset every day. Li Zongbao's body trembled, as if his breath was sucked out, he couldn't even speak. Don't be agitated, senior brother Li. Xiaohua reached out and patted Li Zongbao's shoulder, smiling, Don't blame me for reviving Kai Zhuoxia only now. I was afraid that reviving Kai Zhuoxia first would be detrimental to your fusion with the golden core. Damn it. Li Zongbao cursed. Are you trying to deceive me? Or did I hear wrongly? Xiaohua waved his hand. Li Zongbao's body was immediately pushed 100 li away, and his body was also imprisoned. He couldn't even move. Xiaohua glanced at the confused Li Zongbao, smiled slightly, and waved his left hand, opening the crystal coffin. Xiaohua patted his forehead, and the soul bridge flew out from within. The green seal text fell on it, and a tricolored rainbow bridge fell between Kai Zhuoxia's eyebrows. By the time he finished reading, Xiaohua already knew that Kai Zhuoxia's situation was different from Ziye's. That day in the Kai family, Xiaohua had already unintentionally activated the Prometha realm, pulling out Kai Zhuoxia's soul from the blood sea and sending it into the mysterious dark clouds. However, without the activation of the power of life, the soul that passed through the blood sea of the netherworld could not be awakened. Now, he only needed to use the brush to send the life force into the mysterious dark clouds, and then use the innate chi of a Confucian cultivator to push the already chaotic and solidified mysterious dark clouds back into order. Although it was so simple, not to mention the Dawn Rain continent, even in the entire Yi-Lin continent, even in the entire 4 great continents, who would be able to complete the finishing touch, who would have the true chi of a living person. Xiaohua had already revived Ziyi, and saw Kai Zhuoxia's situation through the soul bridge. His heart was already set. He raised his head again, looked at the inexplicably anxious Li Zongbao, and nodded, indicating Li Zongbao to be at ease. With a wave of his hand, the brush appeared in his hand, along with the activation of soul power, green seal text, and life force. The brush's tip revealed a jade, and slowly entered the soul bridge. It was no different from the resurrection of midnight earlier. In an instant, the entire world fell silent. With a soft thud, the speck of jade fell into Kai Zhuoxia's mysterious dark clouds. Then, the sound of a sprout breaking out of the ground rang out from nowhere. It might have been the sky, the earth, the space between her brows, the brush, or even the hope that Li Zongbao had been waiting for hundreds of years. Following this sound, swoosh! Thousands of lights and shadows gushed out from Xiaohua's body, rushing between heaven and earth, and a hurricane suddenly appeared in the sky. Rumble! At the same time, in the depths of the earth, a rumbling sound was also produced, and the earth trembled. Ka-ka-ka! Several lightning bolts that were as thick as horned dragons also struck out from the void, as if they were some kind of punishment, flickering near Xiaohua. In an instant, everything within 10 li of him showed signs of being destroyed. Although Li Zongbao was standing 100 li away, and wasn't affected by this lightning, under the remnant power of the lightning, that restriction was actually also destroyed by this heaven and earth anomaly. It hurt so much. Following Xiaohua blowing his true chi into the mysterious dark clouds, Kai Zhuoxia's voice that was filled with pain suddenly sounded, and her originally slightly furrowed brows immediately wrinkled. Zhuoxia! Li Zongbao was stupefied. He didn't dare to believe his own ears. After all, Kai Zhuoxia's voice was so soft. He wanted to urge his body, wanted to charge into the several li of thunder-forbidden area, but that lightning, as well as the power of heaven and earth, was so strong that even if he desperately urged his transcendence energy, he still wouldn't be able to charge half a li. Moreover, it was also after he was unable to charge into the thunder-forbidden area that Li Zongbao suddenly felt as if his bones had been pulled out, his entire body went limp in midair, and 2 indescribable streams of hot tears flowed down his cheeks. He wanted to urge his true chi, but even if he had strength, he couldn't use it. Now, he was able to stand in midair, and didn't fall into the cliff, purely because of the air waves set off by the exploding thunder nearby that supported him. Persevering for several hundred years was actually realized in this instant. That tenacity of persevering in foundation establishment collapsed in this instant. Even if it was a cultivator with a stable Tao heart, it was still hard to avoid giving birth to the childish state of a mortal. Seeing that Li Zongbao was about to fall into the mountain stream, hee. Xiaohua's laughter was heard, and a large hand of thunder appeared, grabbing Li Zongbao out of thin air. But Li Zongbao still sat limp beside the crystal coffin, unable to stand up for a moment. Kai Zhuoxia cried out in pain, and immediately after, under her tightly closed eyelids, her eyeballs faintly moved, and then her eyelashes trembled, and she unexpectedly opened her eyes. Right now, dusk was approaching, and the night was gradually approaching. In the distance, the last touch of dusk was reflected on Xiaohua's body, which was somewhat similar to the magma that day. As soon as Kai Zhuoxia opened her eyes, she saw Xiaohua's unchanged appearance, and a trace of panic unconsciously flashed through her eyes. She opened her mouth and said, "Fellow Taoists, see a joke." Only now did I realize that all kinds of cultivation, all kinds of divine abilities, can't compare to those dozens of days of happiness when I was by fellow Taoist Zong Bao's side. I have a small silk pouch in my storage pouch. If fellow Taoist Xiao has the opportunity, please bring it to Zong Bao on behalf of I think he will understand my heart. As for what Zong Bao thinks, I don't care. If he doesn't accept it, fellow Taoist can just burn it. If fellow Taoist is afraid of trouble, also burn it. Just pretend I didn't say anything. Also, Kai Zhuoxia finished speaking in one breath. She looked at the gloomy sky again and said, "Liu Yang's Kai family is where I was born. If fellow Taoist divine abilities reach great success in the future, I hope you can take care of me." Kai Zhuoxia's words were almost exactly the same as what she said several hundred years ago before she died. When Xiaohua heard this, his originally prepared heart immediately softened. His tears couldn't help but flow down. He finally understood why Li Zongbao couldn't even stand steadily. Memories and feelings wouldn't fade with the passage of time. Instead, they would be engraved in the heart for a long time. "Fellow Taoist, don't worry," Xiaohua said with a smile. "What you said, I will definitely do. If I do, please come out from the 9 underworlds and settle accounts with me." "Okay, then I'm relieved." Kai Zhuoxia's time still stopped in the magma of the flame forest swamp. When she saw Xiaohua nod in agreement, she closed her eyes again and quietly waited for death. Kai Zhuoxia's words had already been relayed to Li Zongbao by Xiaohua. However, when he heard it with his own ears today, Li Zongbao's gradually calming heart was once again torn apart. He couldn't help but wail loudly like a young man trapped by love. "Zongbao?" Kai Zhuoxia was extremely familiar with Li Zongbao's voice. When she heard the sound of crying, she immediately recognized it. However, she didn't open her eyes. Instead, she called out in a low voice, "I knew you would definitely come. Just like in my dreams, I was afraid you wouldn't marry me. I was afraid you would make me your concubine. However, I was even more afraid that I wouldn't be able to see you. Now it's fine. I will be with you forever." When Xiaohua saw Li Zongbao struggle a few times, he hurriedly reached out and helped Li Zongbao up. Li Zongbao leaned on the crystal coffin. He took out Kai Zhuoxia's silk bag with trembling hands and raised it in front of Kai Zhuoxia. "Don't worry, Zhuoxia, I will marry you right now. You are the only true love of my life. From now on, I will never let you leave me even half a step." "Okay." Kai Zhuoxia still didn't open her eyes. Only the corner of her mouth revealed a sweet smile. At this moment, that satisfied smile was 10,000 times more beautiful than any beauty in the world. However, when the hand that Kai Zhuoxia had placed in front of her chest was held by a large, trembling hand, the familiar warmth immediately woke her up. Kai Zhuoxia could not help but open her eyes, only to see Li Zongbao's tear-filled face. "Zongbao? Why are you here?" Kai Zhuoxia was shocked. Then, from the corner of her eyes, she also saw Xiaohua's face that was biting his lips to hold back his tears. She immediately hurriedly shouted, Quickly save fellow Xiao. But I can't make it. In the next life. There's no need for the next life. Just in this life." Li Zongbao waited for hundreds of years. Finally, he saw Kai Zhuoxia's eyes again. He couldn't help it again. Just as he said that sentence, he immediately buried his head in Kai Zhuoxia's chest and cried like a child. Seeing this, Xiaohua also tidied up his chaotic mood. He brought the crystal coffin and Li Zongbao to a mountain peak, then quietly turned into the wind and left. The relationship between Li Zongbao and Kai Zhuoxia was comparable to a lifetime ago. The two of them probably had countless things to talk about. Xiao Hua didn't need to delay their happiness again. Deep into the night, the moon also quietly peeked out. Above the quiet starry sky, the stars became more and more resplendent, sprinkling the moonlight and the power of the stars on this incomparable couple. Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't release his spiritual sense to check. He only quietly stood in the distant night sky. No cultivator in the Xiaoyu continent could see his figure and expression. Fellow Taoist, you miss Fairy Hong Xia, right? Taoist, which was obviously not in this list. He asked in a low voice. Xiao Hua looked in the direction of the Huanhua sect and nodded. That's right. I miss Fairy Hong Xia. I haven't seen her for tens of thousands of years. If you miss her, we'll go now. Taoist, which already had the nature of a witch and naturally understood Xiao Hua's thoughts. He smiled. With Kai Zhuoxia, even if there's a spatial fault in the Xiaoyu continent, we won't spend too much time. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed and turned to look at the place where the witness of the truth was. He smiled bitterly. I originally didn't dare to see Fairy Hong Xia. Now that Kai Zhuoxia has come back to life, senior martial brother Li didn't even look at Guyu for Kai Zhuoxia. Compared to him, it's like heaven and earth. How can I dare to bring them over? Then we'll just wait like this? Taoist, which probed. The wait is extremely long. Who knows when it'll end? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5072. There's no other way. Xiao Hua said helplessly. Unless I can't, I'm still afraid of meeting her. Fellow Taoist, you're avoiding her. Taoist, which smiled bitterly. This isn't a solution to the problem. Then what can I do? Xiao Hua shrugged. Originally, there was Xue Xue, but Fairy Hong Xia was unhappy. Xue Xue is gone. On the hidden immortal continent, there's another Princess Xixia. I still don't know how to explain this to Fairy Hong Xia. Now, there's another Ziming. Back in the Million Meng Mountains, Fairy Hong Xia had already reminded me of this. I've always thought that Ziming and I are bosom buddies, and there's no romantic relationship between us. But fate makes fools of us. Now, the bosom buddies that I thought were bosom buddies have met with a setback. Even though I had no other choice, but I can't explain this to Fairy Hong Xia. At this point, Xiao Hua retracted his gaze from Li Zongbao, touched his nose and said, I think I'm already very clean. I pay attention to my image and don't flirt with other women. But the road of life is long, and there's bound to be some women who will provoke me. Why can't I be like senior brother Li, and only stay with Fairy Hong Xia? Taoist, which smiled. Everyone is different. Fellow Taoist, isn't that what you said? If you were like that, you would be Li Zongbao and not Xiao Hua. I understand. Xiao Hua shook his head. What I mean is, why can't I be as faithful as Li Zongbao? What's the use of being faithful? Taoist, which shrugged and smiled. Can being faithful save the world? Can being faithful revive Zai? Can being faithful revive Kai Zhuoxia? Can being faithful protect the world and make everyone happy? Ah! Xiao Hua suddenly laughed. Taoist, which's words were his own thoughts. He stretched out his left hand, looked at the 5 different fingers, and smiled. Fellow Taoist, you're right. I have 5 fingers on my left hand. Although they're not the same length, they each have their own uses. If they're of the same length, it'll be troublesome. Therefore, although this Xiao is not as faithful as Li Zongbao, this Xiao has his own strengths. This Xiao does not need to compare his weaknesses with Li Zongbao's strengths. Besides, being devoted doesn't mean you have any advantages or disadvantages. Don't forget that in your left hand, you still have a magic saber. That's an existence even more powerful than the 5 fingers. Taoist sorcerer smiled and reminded Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua nodded. Fellow Taoist, you're right. Even if I'm not good, if I can save the billions of cultivators in the 3 continents from the end of the world, then I won't be a heartless person in vain. Hee, fellow Taoist, you're just finding excuses for yourself. Taoist, which smiled. But before he could finish speaking, Taoist Witch and Xiaohua looked up at the same time. Xiaohua smiled and said, "Taoist Thunder, you're finally back." In just a moment, the void was torn apart and perfected thunderbolt flew out. Xiaohua and Taoist Witch went up to greet him and cupped their hands. "Thank you, fellow Taoist. How did it go?" "Tisk." Perfected Thunderbolt curled his lips and took out the Kunlun mirror. He handed it to Xiaohua and said, "Don't mention it. I didn't get the metal and wood magnetism, but I brought someone back instead." Xiaohua was stunned. He took the Kunlun mirror and asked curiously, "What's going on? Did something happen to Mingxi?" "Fellow Taoist, you're thinking too much." Perfected Thunderbolt smiled and said, "Naturally, nothing happened to Mingxi. The metal and wood magnetism is also there. However, fellow Taoist, you've forgotten that the metal and wood magnetism is the ultimate power of the 5 elements. Although our Kunlun mirror is an ancient magic artifact, it's now in the mortal world. The array inside is also the law of heaven and earth of the Dawn Rain continent. It can't surpass the 5 elements. How can the space contain the metal and wood magnetism? Therefore, this humble Taoist has made a wasted trip." Hearing that the metal and wood magnetism was fine, Xiaohua's heart was at ease. He smiled and said, "That's fine. It's all my negligence that made fellow Taoist come here. However, who did fellow Taoist bring back?" "A silly, delusional cultivator who has designs on the metal and wood magnetism," Perfected Thunderbolt said and looked at Li Zongbao's side. He actually lowered his voice and said, "Kai Zhuixia is alive? She met Li Zongbao? What are they talking about?" Xiaohua saw Perfected Thunderbolt's expression and his heart moved. He asked, "What does what they say have to do with you?" "Hee." Perfected Thunderbolt scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "I also want to hear it. When I see Qingqing, I'll tell her." "Ah." Xiaohua laughed and said, "You don't need to think too much about the real words of love. Just say it from your heart. And Qingqing definitely won't care about what you say. As long as you say it, she'll like to hear it. If you say too much, she'll be suspicious of the origin of your words." "I'll go listen." Perfected Thunderbolt didn't have so many scruples. He turned invisible and flew out. "This guy." Taoist Sorcerer shook his head helplessly. "Don't tell others that I know you if they catch you." Xiaohua laughed in his heart and activated the Kunlun mirror. He saw a thin old man with white hair wearing a green Taoist robe standing in the air with an inexplicable surprise on his face. Wasn't this the cultivator Mo Qingyuan that Xiaohua met in the netherworld? "Xiaohua." Mo Qingyuan saw Xiaohua and immediately exclaimed, "You? Why are you here? When did you come?" However, before Xiaohua could answer, Mo Qingyuan looked around and shouted again, "No, this isn't the netherworld. This seems to be the Huan country. Why am I here?" While speaking, Mo Qingyuan opened his mouth and the magic tool, the wooden dragon chopper, flew out again. However, this time, the power of the wooden dragon chopper was several times stronger than before. Xiaohua looked at Mo Qingyuan's late-stage gold core cultivation and understood his intention of going to the netherworld. He smiled and raised his hand. The brilliance on the wooden dragon chopper faded and it fell into Mo Qingyuan's hand like a dead wood. You're actually pregnant?" When Mo Qingyuan saw this, he couldn't help but be shocked. Because he saw that Xiaohua's appearance didn't change, he didn't release his divine sense. When he saw that his natal magic treasure was so easily knocked down by Xiaohua, he couldn't help but exclaim. When he used the spell to check Xiaohua's cultivation, sure enough, he couldn't see Xiaohua's cultivation at all. Xiaohua didn't point it out and said with a smile, "I was one step ahead. How have you been these years, fellow Taoist Mo?" Junior greets Senior Xiao. Mo Qingyuan was surprised and didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly tidied up his Taoist robe and bowed respectfully. "Junior troubled Senior before, please forgive me." Hee. Xiaohua helped Mo Qingyuan up and said with a smile, "It's been hundreds of years. There's no need to mention it." Yes. Mo Qingyuan stood up and looked at Xiaohua's unchanged appearance in the night. He sighed and said, "In the blink of an eye, 700 years have passed. The Qi refinement cultivator from back then has already become a grandmaster, but this junior is still lingering in the late-stage gold core. Everyone has different opportunities, so you don't have to sigh with emotion. Xiaohua said with a smile. From the foundation establishment stage to the gold core stage, I don't know how many cultivators have suffered. It's really not easy for you to be able to rely on the puppet sacrificial refining method and take a unique path to reach the late-stage gold core stage. A strange expression appeared on Mo Qingyuan's face, as well as a trace of awkwardness. He knew very well that in the puppet refinement method he gave Xiaohua back then, there were some small tricks. Xiaohua might not have known about it before, but how could Xiaohua, who was pregnant, not see through it? Since Xiaohua didn't mention it, Mo Qingyuan didn't dare to ask too much and just pretended that Xiaohua didn't notice. Of course, Mo Qingyuan was also somewhat surprised. Although Xiaohua was a nascent soul grandmaster, how could he see through the secret technique he cultivated? It seemed that in some jade slips, the nascent soul grandmasters mentioned didn't have such formidable strength, right? Chapter 5073. Haha, I was expelled from the Imperial Thunder sect a long time ago. Xiaohua replied, maybe you were in the extreme north and didn't know. Oh. Mo Qingyuan was shocked. The Imperial Thunder sect actually expelled a master like you? How is that possible? That was hundreds of years ago. Xiaohua said with a smile. Mo Qingyuan smiled bitterly. The Imperial Thunder sect must be regretting it now. They actually gave away a nascent soul master. Don't mention this again. Xiaohua waved his hand. Let's talk about the Rejuvenation Chamber of Commerce. This. Mo Qingyuan said embarrassedly, I've disappointed you. I was in the extreme north and just recently arrived in the 3 countries of cultivation. Because I didn't have much time left, I didn't dare to delay and went to the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. I only heard that the Rejuvenation Chamber of Commerce is a large chamber of commerce in the country of Xi. It often holds auctions in the country of Xi. Because this Chamber of Commerce has the rejuvenation pill that other places don't have, it's called the Rejuvenation Chamber of Commerce. I really don't know about other things. Xiaohua nodded. Needless to say, the Rejuvenation Chamber of Commerce was definitely created by Qian Diheng. Then, Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, Mo Qing, you and I have some fate. You also have some credibility about the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, although I can't accept you as my disciple, I can give you some opportunities. However, I want to remind you that after you succeed in your cultivation, you should treat the world with kindness. Think more about the good of others and less about the bad of others. In particular, don't do anything that offends the heavens and reason. Mo Qingyuan was delighted at first, then he pondered over Xiaohua's words and bowed. Master Xiao, don't worry. I admit that I'm not a good person, but I haven't done anything bad. The word, credibility, still has some weight in my heart. Good. Xiaohua nodded and took out a jade bottle and a few jade slips from his chest. He handed them to Mo Qingyuan and said, this is the rejuvenation pill, the cultivation method of soul splitting, some sword formations, and puppet cultivation methods. Take it and cultivate by yourself. Ah? Mo Qingyuan knew that Xiaohua had some good things for him, but he didn't expect it to be such good things. The cultivation method of spirit severing, that was a priceless treasure. Apart from the big sects of the 3 kingdoms, which cultivator could possess it? Mo Qingyuan actually didn't dare to believe that Xiaohua would give him such a cultivation technique. Of course, even after Mo Qingyuan took the jade slip and scanned it with his divine sense, he was still unable to confirm that the obscure cultivation technique was for severed soul cultivators to cultivate. However, he could still see the cultivation method of the early nascent soul stage. At the very least, it was very consistent with the incomplete cultivation method that he obtained. When he looked at the sword formation and puppet cultivation method with an inconceivable thought, he couldn't help but kneel in midair again, kowtow and say, Master Xiao, this junior has let you down, there's no need for that. Xiaohua helped Mo Qingyuan up and said with a smile, you just have to remember how I treated you, and you should treat those juniors that you feel have a bright future in the future. Similarly, you should use your own heart to accommodate this world. Yes, I understand. Emo Qingyuan stood up and almost swore. This junior will definitely pursue seniors' teachings throughout my life. I will treat the world with kindness. To the juniors, I hope you will keep your word. Xiaohua said with a smile. I also hope to see the moment you step into the spirit-severing stage. Thank you, Master Xiao. Emo Qingyuan bowed again. This junior will take his leave. Go. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, This is the edge of Million Mountains Meng, the boundary between soul cultivators and sword cultivators. Be careful. Ah? Emo Qingyuan was even more shocked. He didn't know how he suddenly came here from the netherworld. However, he didn't dare to ask too much. He faced Xiaohua and slowly flew away respectfully, only turning around when he was far away. Xiaohua is really a nascent soul cultivator? Emo Qingyuan was secretly puzzled, but after a moment he smiled again. It doesn't matter what Taoist Zhao's strength is. With such a kind and virtuous senior in this world, the stronger he is, the better. I will first take the rejuvenation pill and find a place far away to meditate. When I step into the nascent soul realm, I will pay him a visit. Emo Qingyuan had mysteriously come and left without a sound. Aside from Xiaohua, no one else knew. However, this night had changed Emo Qingyuan a lot. No one knew which of the younger generation would benefit from Emo Qingyuan in the future, but if they thought about it, it would all be because of Xiaohua. Seeing the sun rise in the east, the thunderbolt immortal flew back quietly. Looking at his narrowed eyes, Xiaohua couldn't help but think of shifty eyes. The Taoist thunderclap had returned. Behind him were naturally Li Zongbao and Kai Zhuoxia. Being together with Li Zongbao, Kai Zhuoxia was actually somewhat shy. When she saw Xiaohua, she called out, "Fellow Taoist Xiao," and didn't know what else to say. After all, she already knew from Li Zongbao that a long time had passed. Xiaohua was no longer the little cultivator under her protection, but rather a mighty cultivator so tall that she couldn't imagine. However, she still quietly pulled on Li Zongbao's Taoist robe. Li Zongbao understood and the two of them were about to bow down. Xiaohua hurriedly raised his hand and helped the two of them up. He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Kai, why do you have to do this?" Xiaohua's words, "fellow Taoist Kai," made Kai Zhuoxia feel somewhat familiar. If Li Zongbao wasn't next to her, she really would feel that this was no different from several hundred years ago. Unfortunately, Kai Zhuoxia still sighed and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, I don't dare to say too much. However, this is a genuine life-saving grace, so I have to thank you." "Fellow Taoist Kai is wrong," Xiaohua replied. "The one who left your soul was the earth, but the one who saved your life was the heavens. The heavens used my hands to revive you. This is the virtue of the heavens and the earth, so I don't dare to take credit. Besides, my cultivation came from the heavens and the earth, so I should repay the heavens and the earth and benefit the people. Fellow Taoist, if you worship me, wouldn't you be humiliating me? If I had this divine ability and didn't save you, wouldn't I be ashamed to face the heavens and the earth because of my own selfish desires, and my cultivation would be like flowing water for nothing? Therefore, if fellow Taoist wants to thank, then thank the heavens for their kindness, thank the earth for their virtue, and thank the heavens for giving you another chance." Xiaohua's words were profound. His words were mixed with the language of Confucian cultivators, and there were even some parts that didn't make sense. However, this didn't affect Kai Zhuoxia and Li Zongbao's understanding. Xiaohua revered the heavens and was grateful to the heavens and the earth. They looked at each other, then knelt down and kowtowed to the heavens, the earth, the sun, and the moon, saying, "Above the heavens, below the earth, Li Zongbao and Kai Zhuoxia kowtow to the heavens and the earth, and thank the heavens and the earth for giving us the chance to grow old. We won't disappoint the heavens and the earth, and will live together for the rest of our lives, fellow Taoist." Xiaohua suddenly heard the voice of the Thunderbolt Immortal and asked, "Is this the legendary kowtow to the heavens and the earth?" "Of course not." Xiaohua replied, kowtowing to the heavens and the earth before entering the bridal chamber is the custom of the human race. Oh, the thunderbolt immortal mumbled and didn't say anything else. After Li Zongbao and Kai Zhuoxia stood up, Xiaohua said again, "Fellow Taoist Kai's resurrection will definitely cause a disturbance in the future. The two of you don't need to mention I. Just say that it's a gift from the heavens and the earth, and that the glory belongs to the heavens and the earth." I understand. Li Zongbao had long been accustomed to Xiaohua's low profile, so he nodded slightly and said. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then said, "Also, I have something to remind the two of you." Although Senior Marshal Brother Li is infatuated with fellow Taoist Kai, and even the heavens and the earth can feel that fellow Taoist Kai is also worried about Senior Marshal Brother Li in her heart, the two of you haven't been together for a long time, so it's inevitable that there will be some grudges between you two in the future. I hope that at that time, fellow Taoist Kai can think about Senior Marshal Brother Li's hard work for the past few hundred years, and Senior Marshal Brother Li can think about fellow Taoist Kai's loneliness in the crystal coffin. In this world, there's nothing more important than the separation of life and death. Since the two of you have already experienced the separation of life and death, you should be able to accept everything in this world. Fellow Taoist Xiao. As soon as Kai Zhuoxia heard Xiaohua's words, she understood a lot. She shouted, then immediately thought for a moment, and said, "Forget it, I'll still call you Taoist Xiao. I heard from Zongbao that Taoist Zhao's name is extremely famous in the Daybreak continent." Xiaohua shrugged his shoulders, and with an indifferent expression, he replied, "Why should we care about some title between us? Just like before, calling me Xiaohua is also fine. In front of others, it's better to call me Taoist Xiao." Li Zongbao also echoed, "It might not matter to us, but if others hear it, they'll feel that a certain person has no respect for others and doesn't understand etiquette." "As you wish," Xiaohua said with a smile. And Kai Zhuoxia continued, "I understand Taoist Zhao's words very clearly. These words should still be remembered by I in my heart. Of course, I also understand that little sister's aspirations are extremely high. If she misunderstands Taoist Xiao in any way, I will definitely explain it to her in private." Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist, you misunderstood." Seeing this, Li Zongbao continued, "Zhuoxia has already been resurrected, and my greatest wish in this life has already been fulfilled. Moreover, with Junior Brother's previous cultivation method, my future cultivation will also be smooth. Just now, Zhuoxia said that she misses her family very much and wants to go back to the Kai family. If Junior Brother doesn't have anything else to do, why don't we go together?" Xiaohua saw that the more he explained, the more he made things worse. He simply shook his head and said, "Senior Brother Li, I'll go to the Kai family, but not now. Junior Brother has more important things to do. Oh, if Senior Brother Li needs it, how about Junior Brother send you back?" After Xiaohua said this, he regretted it first. After all, he said that he didn't have time, and then he said that he wanted to send the two people back. Wasn't this the legendary contradiction? Fortunately, Li Zongbao and Kai Zhuoxia didn't know what the space escape technique was. The two of them hurriedly waved their hands. Li Zongbao said, "If Junior Brother has something important to do, you can go and do it. The two of us want to return slowly. After all, Zhuoxia hasn't traveled to Huan country and other places yet. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.